and I'm gonna make bracelets so we know who we can trust.
And I'm gonna sell them on my TikTok shop. And 20% of all of the proceeds from the sales that I make from selling these blue friendship bracelets, I'm gonna donate to organizations that Trump would hate.
As allies, it isn't enough to just be passively accepting. We have to stand up against racism in all its ugly forms. I think if a Black person had been there, they would have shaken my hand and said thank you.
Hey, white women, sorry to rain on the pity parade.
So liberal white women, ourselves included, are very unhappy with the election results. And we're angry for good reasons, but we're not exactly channeling our anger in the best way. If you guys have been on TikTok at all post-election, a lot of white women are calling for blue friendship bracelets and swearing off men to join the 4B movement. And while we think this comes from a good place, we think a lot of these liberal white women are somewhat missing the point, since 53% of the white women demographic, the largest voting bloc in America, voted for Trump. So the call is coming from inside the house, and we just wanted to make an episode also being liberal white women, call everybody in to have a conversation about white feminism, performative activism, virtue signaling, and TERF, and what we can actually do to be effective under this Trump administration.
Bitch, what I was trying to say is this situation got me so wet and so dry at the same time. Exactly.
What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of So Wet, So Dry. I am one of your hosts, Autumn, like the season. I decorated for Christmas early this year because I simply needed it, and I work in entertainment.
And I'm your other host, Fiji, like the island, like the water. I am hosting Friendsgiving at my condo this year, and it is insanely stressful, and I work in social media and marketing.
If you guys are new here and tuning in to So Wet, So Dry for the very first time, we explore duality through deep diving topics about sex, relationships, and personal identity, all where internet trends and reality collide. We do post polls on our Instagram for every single episode, so make sure you're following our Instagram to be a part of that. We do share the results in every episode. We are So Wet, So Dry on Instagram, the O's are zeros, and we're So Wet, So Dry on all platforms. Wherever you guys are listening to this episode, make sure you do remember to subscribe or follow. Definitely like the video or the episode. Leave us a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. The whole point of us doing So Wet, So Dry is to build community. So please comment below, share with your friends so we can keep it going.
So this is our first episode back recording since the election. We did put out kind of an emergency episode directed at white women who voted for Trump, white women who are Republicans, white women who are moderates. If you are a white Republican woman who voted for Trump, go over and watch that episode, please, please, please. It would mean a lot to us. We really do want to start a conversation. And to our regular audience, we know we put out an episode last week that was all about dark romance. It ends with us, toxic relationships in the media, but that was pre-recorded. So I just want to say, hi guys, we're back. Thank you for bearing with us to have a whole week dedicated to a different audience. But this week we are speaking to you guys, especially the white liberal women in our audience. If that is not how you identify, of course, you are still welcome to listen to this episode. Please start a conversation in the comments if there's anything that we missed that you guys want us to mention. We want this to be a place to have real conversations and just do better. So I want to start us out with the 4B movement. If you guys listen to us loyally, you know that we have covered the 4B movement, decentering men, celibacy in the past, but things are looking a little bit different post-election. A lot of women are breaking up with their boyfriends. They're swearing off men, decentering men, practicing 4B. And a lot of this comes out of the election poll results, with 53% of women in general voting Democrat and 55% of men in general voting Republican. We're gonna get down into breakdown by race in a little bit, but that is kind of what we're talking about. And so let's watch some TikToks of some women that are going 4B.
So many people are saying stuff like, oh, the 4B movement is just a TikTok trend. It's not going to take off in real life. It's just a fringe movement. Are they sure about that? Because both CNN and NBC have already reported on the 4B movement since the election.
years ago. I cut out men so long ago, and honestly, my life has been so much better. So much better. I don't know why this is all of a sudden this big social phenomenon that people are talking about post-election, but like literally, like I cut out men years ago. I honestly don't even see them anymore. I walk by, sometimes I bump into them because I don't even see them. Like,
I have talked about celibacy before. After Julia Fox spoke on it publicly, I think that it allowed more women to openly speak about it. I personally have been celibate or abstinent for several years and haven't gone on dates with men because, one, they're disappointing, and two, what's in it for me?
So if you guys don't know, this movement started in South Korea, and we're gonna get into, how this movement started, how it's been adopted in the US in a little bit. But there are quite a few TikToks like these also in the comments of almost any video that I've seen on the liberal democratic side of TikTok, especially if it's on videos of white women or comments from white women. It's 4B, 4B, 4B everywhere. Top liked comment. It's existing in the comment section quite a bit. But I just want to start us off with the first poll that we asked you guys, our audience. Will you be participating in the 4B movement? And this is just in general before we go deeply into anything else. Only 13% of you guys said yes, 57% said no, and a solid 30% said maybe. So, Autumn, how do you feel about this 4B?
So I definitely voted that I won't be participating in the 4B movement. I've never really been interested in it. I do support people doing it if that's what they want to do. But like you said, like at the beginning, I don't really think that's the answer for this personally. I mean, only 13% said yes, but I do think the 30% maybe is what to pay attention to, because those are people that are maybe thinking critically about it and are not leaning yes all the way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting that that's the thing that people are pushing for the most right now on the white women's side.
Yeah, that they're really clinging to. And I feel you, like, same, like, I mean, both of us have practiced celibacy journeys, mine a lot shorter than yours, but they weren't.
Well, mine was not intentional, guys.
Yeah, yours was not as a means of protest or as like anything like that. Me personally, I'm not doing a ton of dating right now, but I do want a happy relationship. I want sex. I want all of those things. For me, that's not what protest looks like. But again, I support women who want to do it, especially the women in South Korea. But we are going to get into the weeds of a little bit more about this movement. But just going off the top, before I knew as much post-election, I was already thinking, no. And I was surprised that so many white women were like, this is the wave. Like, will it stick? We're going to get into that.
Because decentering men and ruling men out forever are two different things, in my opinion.
Yes.
And it's like, you're someone that wants relationship, you want love, you're attracted to all genders, so that includes men. Yeah. So, you know what I mean?
And decentering men to me in your head and the way that you move about this world and society is a lot different than like being able to have a happy, healthy relationship with the right man.
Right.
So like, And
decentering men to me too is like not letting men just say things because, it's like not letting them get away with that stuff, not just like killing them and dying them out completely. And believe me, there was times where we were both down. I used to talk about, we could kill them, we could get their sperm in like a million fridges across the country. Like I literally used to say that, but I just don't think that's the answer anymore. And we're definitely going to tell you why in this episode.
Yeah. So first, let's do some background on, what's all going on with this 4B movement. So first, there was this viral story where this man was left speechless as his wife files for divorce after he voted for Donald Trump. There was that TikTok that we played in the beginning, but I'm gonna put a screenshot here right now. This one went super viral. It had like over 1.5 million likes, and she's like petting a cat, kind of referencing what JD Vance said about cat ladies. Yeah. And she said, doing my part as an American woman by breaking up with my Republican boyfriend last night and officially joining the 4B movement this morning.
It is kind of funny.
It is kind of funny. And there were a lot of women also, not just commenting 4B, a lot of white women that were saying filing for divorce papers today, like filed for divorce papers today. And we're going to get into a little bit, it's
right. And it's
doing
tricky.
It after is like,
yeah. And it's tricky, right, though? Because it's like, yes, divorcing them, that's not a bad thing. That's actually something you should do. I'm glad that you're not with someone that obviously doesn't care about anyone but themselves. Yep. But it's like doing it now and then like posting a quirky TikTok about it to show that like you're on one of the good white people, like you're doing your duty. It's just like, it doesn't hit the same. Like, I look at this like it's comedy. This is not like any like active form of protest, like you divorcing someone that you probably should have never been with in the first place. But it's not a bad thing. Like, yes, you should divorce him. Like, I'm glad you're free of that. And if that's what it took to get you to this point, cool.
Right. And it's always better in hindsight, right? Because a lot of women were also saying, like, you know, well, you should have been broken up with him, been divorced him. Like, this is what it takes now or whatever. And I do also just want to be transparent, guys. Both Autumn and I have dated Trump-leaning people. I will...
And for me, a woman too.
A woman, a white woman, and both of us black men. And my relationship with that one ended not that long ago, and not because of the election. So I can't even sit here and talk because it's like, you know, we got into political conversations where I knew it was very clear this man did not respect my rights, did not respect a lot of groups of people, and I stayed because I don't know, you know, and it's not okay, but I can relate.
Yeah. And that's the decentering men piece where it's like, just because you're attracted to someone, you like someone, you're in love with someone, it's like that, you cannot just let it slide. And we've both learned that. Like, and it's extremely difficult. And I'm in the past, not really anymore, but in the past, I haven't asked people like what their political preferences or who they voted for in 2016, like on the first date. It's like, I should have been.
Yeah.
And then it's like, by the time I learned, it was like,
too
I was
late.
Already
because I don't think
too
I
late,
found
but
out
I still
till
feel like that's wrong.
6 to 8 months in. And I remember that being like, for me, like one of the things where I was like, how the fuck can I be with this person? Like, our values are so different. But like, especially for someone who's married and you've been married since before 2016 and all this stuff, like a lot of things came to light during these elections. And it's like, you know, politics are a big breaking point in a lot of relationships. Like, I fully support women who want to end relationships because of this election. And even though it's better in hindsight, oh, you should have been done it, like, at least they're doing it now.
Yeah. And we can even relate it to us. It's like, we should have been talking to white Republican women for the whole year, for all the time. And then something horrible happens. And then we're like, we make a video. So it's like, we get that. Like, I get that. And like, even in 2020 with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, it's like, oh, then I'm going to make a Canva graphic about unlearning whiteness. Not before. Right. I mean, it was already happening anyways. This one was just like, we were all at home watching the news, so it felt bigger, but it's like that had already been happening, talking about violence against Black people in the country. So it's like, I get that. And like, as white people, like, we get that. Yeah. But we're choosing to do better, and we hope you can too.
And we're like, trying, because I feel like there's this moment in culture where there's all these white women, you know, other groups of people. We're saying everybody, but we're focusing on white women because that's our demographic. But like, that want to do something, and we also want to do something. And like, the more we're reading, it's just like, we have to channel that energy. We can't control the past, unfortunately. We can learn from it, but let's channel this in like a better direction. So I like fully support those women that did that. Claiming that they're gonna go 4B, I think, is a whole different thing.
That's a whole different part.
We're gonna talk about. So,
because that's also like, I just don't believe that. Like, you were just married for so long, you got divorced, and now you're 4B all the way. It's like, that's almost like concerning. But
I mean, and of course, like any breakup you go through, like, I mean, I don't know, me personally, I'm gonna go fuck someone that night. But like, some people just swear off dating, relationships, all of that for a good period of time after a breakup. That's just normal.
And that's fine.
Yeah, but like 4B and that are different things. Like, let's be clear about what the movement is.
Right.
So getting into the 4B movement, actually, it started in South Korea. And one of the events that kind of led to the beginning of the 4B movement was the murder of a young woman in a public toilet in Seoul's wealthy Gangnam district in 2016. The assailant was a 34-year-old male with a history of mental illness who later testified to police that he had stabbed the woman whom he did not know because he had been shunned by women in the past. So this is kind of what you can think of as the South Korean version of an incel that we have in America. They're called incels, you know, as well. They have a different term that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Okay. Some more from Rolling Stone. The 4B movement began in the 2010s on the South Korean website WOMAD. It predicated on the 4 pillars of women refusing marriage, Baihan, childbirth, Baishuslan, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, guys, dating, Bayane, and sex, Bisexu, with men. Bi meaning no indicates the 4 no's that were their answer to systemic misogyny in South Korea. And you know, white women have since posted videos of them shaving their heads online, which is another thing I forgot to mention. We have gone full out in support of this slightly more intense 6B14 movement, which has an added 2 Bs being by SOBI, no consumption of products that endorse misogyny or engage in sexist marketing, and by DOPE, solidarity between unmarried women. So kind of like forming communities of women where they're like living together and working off of each other. And as far as the sexism landscape in South Korea, abortion still remains an illegal gray area. Abortion pills are currently illegal, with the government blocking access to overseas pharmacists, but abortion itself was decriminalized in 2021, so they do have, you know, more access to abortion a little bit than we do. The current government has eliminated words like women from policies addressing women's rights, meaning there aren't any legislative oversights specifically addressing women's needs. And on a day-to-day basis, there's a sense of intrusion and lack of autonomy. One South Korean woman says there's a huge spy cam issue in South Korea. Spy cams are prevalent in restrooms, hotels, Airbnbs, etc. They were even found in elementary school restrooms. If you go to a female restroom, in Korea, you will see tissue paper stuffed in any hole and crevice in every stall. That's the kind of quiet distrust you feel around you as a woman living there. And then a little more at a systemic level, women are regularly asked about their plans for pregnancy and marriage in job interviews. Divorce is seen as very taboo, with the blame falling on the mother and prejudice against the children. Races are harder to come by for women, which often means they must become dependent on their husbands for income. There's also the glaring societal pressures to chase vanity, status, and rigid beauty standards. South Korean passport photos are often freely retouched, while injectable procedures can run as low as $19. In 2017, the government attempted to outlaw the hiring practice of asking applicants to include headshots on resumes, as appearance and attractiveness was often a factor in the hiring process. And then there was also a fringe feminist movement called Escape the Corset that arose in the 2010s, specifically addressing the pressure Korean women felt to constantly adhere to beauty standards. But they also say in the article, this doesn't mean that the movement is widely accepted. 4B is controversial even among the women in the country. South Korea has held the lowest marriage and birth rates worldwide for the past 20 years, with the government and corporations offering hefty cash incentives for couples to have children, but it's difficult to pinpoint just how much 4B is a factor in the steep drop. Critics have called 4B a fringe movement, saying very few women actually participate. The movement itself has been criticized by other feminists for being transphobic and homophobic, peddling TERF brand feminism. The movement claimed to have just 4,000 members in 2019, while the subreddit still sits at only 13,000 followers. And one woman from South Korea said she's not entirely sure how it's being perceived in other countries, but hopes that people can understand why it's happening at all. She says, I hope it's seen not merely as a boycott of men, but as a journey for women to step away from relationships with men and take time to understand who they are, what they like, and how to live for themselves. So kind of that decentering men kind of situation. So
with that in mind, the whole thing hits a lot different.
Yes, exactly.
Because who's talking about that part?
Exactly. And I think
now I feel sick to my stomach a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit like we have sensationalized it in America quite a bit when you look at the actual numbers. I mean, 4,000 members in 2019. So we can assume it's grown a little bit in South Korea.
Right.
And then the subreddit was only 13,000 followers. And I did find a video from a woman from South Korea. And first I found her TikTok, which I'm not going to include. I'm just going to summarize what she says in her YouTube video, because I watched her TikTok and then I went to her YouTube video to kind of get the full context. And she was essentially saying in the TikTok, you know, like all these American women are pushing 4B, 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 but I'm from South Korea and I had never heard of it until I had seen it from American women on TikTok. And in the TikTok, she talked about, you know, how much of Korean culture is very much about, you know, dating and marriage and having a family. And, you know, K-dramas And also like the whole, like you pay someone for a matchmaking service, like that's a huge part of their culture.
Okay.
And she got a lot of hate on this video. Also because she called women of 4B misandrous. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. If you guys don't.
What does misandrous mean?
So misogyny is the hatred of women. Misandry is the hatred of men.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that, how did I not know that?
You've
I don't
probably
know.
heard it. You just, I mean, we say it less.
Like
we say it less. Yeah.
Right.
So she made this YouTube video because she got a lot of hate on the video, right? From American women saying like, you don't know what you're talking about. You must be removed. You're a male-centered woman. Like they were going in on this poor woman, right? And this is just one woman's perspective that I found, guys.
Right.
So I'm sure there's others. But what she said is she searched 4B on Google in Korean and could not find anything. And then she searched it in English and she was able to find things in America. So she was like, the gap between how it's being covered in Korea is very different than how it's being covered in America.
Right.
And then she says that the low birth rates are very much due to economics. Like families, couples cannot afford to have children because the economy is so bad. And that's why the government is, incentivizing having children by giving out payments and like financial support. And she doubles down on the fact that matchmaking services are insanely popular. There's over 3,000 services and they are more successful than ever. She said dating apps is the highest it's ever been, up 8% from a year ago in South Korea. And she said everyone in her circle very much still wants to date. And she even asked the people in her circle that she knows, like, have you heard of this 4B movement, whatever? And they're like, no, I haven't heard about it. You're the first person. Or if they did, it was from American TikTok. So then she gets into, she did some research about 4B, okay?
Okay.
And there are these two groups called eBay and Magalia. And Magalia is the feminist side of things, and eBay is the incel side of things. And she kind of says that feminism didn't really come to South Korea until around 2016 with the Me Too movement. They had their own form of the Me Too movement, but she said it got very radical really quick. So on the eBay side of things, the incel side of things, there was a lot of really violent stuff that went down. They terrorized a girl and like live streamed it. They were taking pictures of female cousins at home unknowingly. Someone posted a link to download child porn for 3 minutes, which got hastily deleted, like all this bad stuff. But then on the Magalia side of things, the feminist side of things, they were calling gay men AIDS carriers and snuck into gay communities and outed them online. Someone got pregnant, waited to find out the sex of the baby, and once it was a boy, they said they were gonna abort it, calling it something in Korean, which is AKA penis bastard, and referred to it as a parasite growing inside her, so she aborted it, and included a picture of her blood clots everywhere. Someone made a post about wanting to sexually stiffen some young boy she was looking at in the playground and how badly she wanted to eat their innocent young ding-dongs. And it gets worse. Yeah, a lot of bad stuff. So she essentially says, like, when I say misandry, I'm not, like, dramatizing things. Like, I'm not being like, oh, how people will call, people who aren't feminists, like conservatives, will be like, oh, you hate men. Like, we hear that all the time. Oh, you hate men. No, we don't. We just want equal rights. But the way that feminism kind of entered the sphere in South Korea, she says feminism is seen as a dirty word and it's associated with Magalia and also these very like radical groups that are homophobic and transphobic as well. And she says this line exactly, which I thought was insane. She said, being a feminist in South Korea is seen as saying, I'm an Andrew Tate supporter.
Wow.
Like, she knows who Andrew Tate is. Okay, so like, let's just, and she said, Korean men are so anti-feminist.
Wow.
Yeah, and she says Korean men are so anti-feminist because there's mandatory military service where, they have to go and they might have to go to war. And then women have grown into the job market since they've been away. Older men, she said the older men definitely benefited a lot more from like patriarchy and stuff like that, but she's saying right now it's not really the case because women can go to university. There used to be a preference for boys being born, but now they want women to be born more because women are seen as taking care of the family a little bit better. Like, there is a lot, from what she was saying, I'm like, okay, so it sounds like there's still a lot of gender roles. And like, it's certain things that I feel like as radical feminists and intersectional feminists, sometimes you would want to be like, okay, yeah, but that's still sexism. Okay, yeah, but that's still sexism. But she's saying that the only people advocating for certain things are very radical. So she said that all these men, these young men, are looking at things like, what did I do? And they're working like these hard labor jobs, these like blue collar hard labor jobs. There is the gender payback, but it's because of those jobs, she says. And she said their parental leave is actually 1 year and 6 months, and they just extended it for men as well. And my takeaways were essentially just like, she said this too. She said gender roles are, a worldwide problem, but it's not like terrible in South Korea as America's making it seem. Like, in certain ways they have more rights than we do, or about the same. In a lot of ways she was describing it, I was like, that's the same as America. Like, our fathers and grandfathers definitely benefited from patriarchy a lot more than the men today. Like, we can all kind of agree that. Right. And she was just saying, she loves men and she loves women and she wants a happy relationship. And like, she thinks that on both sides of this gender war spectrum, it is really bad, and that it's kind of dangerous for America to sensationalize this stuff, because the movement that they are adopting is actually like very misled and kind of hateful, has roots in like radical feminism, which we're going to talk about all the types of bad TERF feminism, white feminism, all the types that were like exclusive to people. But I just want to include, real quick before we wrap this part up and then talk about it, some comments that she got on her video talking about this stuff. Yeah, read them.
Okay. So reading some comments under the TikTok, someone said, maybe because if you assume all men are safe, you'll end up raped and dead. But you do you, babe. Don't come crying when it happens to you. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Someone said, hope you get picked soon. Talking about the military?
No, like a pick me.
Oh.
They're calling her a pick me.
Okay, sorry. Someone said, lumping misogyny with misandry tells me everything I need to know, little miss pick me. People don't understand that the United States is not the only fucking country ever exists, and that anyone could live anywhere else and have a different experience.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. And also,
like, she lives there. How are you going to tell her like what it's like and what she's doing?
Exactly. And I want us to have a real conversation about the state of feminism as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just get through this. Someone said something else hateful and said actual male-centered bitch. That's straight up horrible. Someone said you look like you need attention from Korea's misogynistic, weird, and lonely men. You can have them, auntie. Nobody wants them, obviously. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So my kind of like thoughts with all of this, and like, I don't think we've been talking about this enough. I don't know of forums and stuff as much where women are taking this super violent approach in America. But I think it is dangerous when we start to adopt movements that we don't completely know about in other countries that are fringe movements. And
that's
also,
what our country does. That's all they do.
Yeah.
Is appropriate the fuck out of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not separating myself from that. But
I mean, we do it as well. I mean, America's #1 appropriator of every other culture, especially white women. Like, yeah. But the thing, and we've covered this in the podcast so much, like the gender war stuff, right? Like, we are by no means condoning at all incel culture, sexism, manosphere, Andrew Tate, none of that. But we also cannot continue to just point the finger over at the men and be like, everything's your fault, you're a piece of shit, blah, 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 when they are not the ones that built this society. And it's so funny because it's like, she was saying a lot of the same things. Say it louder
for those in the back, babe.
She was saying a lot of the same things that I'm like, I feel like we feel, a lot of women feel, where it's like, there's all this pressure. Men are trash. The Me Too movement brought on this whole wave of like, decenter men, 4B, we're doing all this stuff. Men are the common enemy. And white women are the biggest proponents of this. It's like, let us remind you guys, the problem is the system. The problem is the system. Are those white men being, brainwashed by Trump and the right? Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're missing the plot.
Right. And is some fault on them for not doing better? Yes, absolutely. And like we know the dangers of actually hating men and swearing off men and just treating them like they're there for money. Like we know those dangers and how low that can actually make you feel. And I think I would be like, yeah, fuck men if I didn't like know those fucking dangers, bro. Like I really do. But it's like, that is just seriously not the answer. And coming from us, like, and me, like, I used to literally hate them, but I didn't hate men. I hated the system and what it does to, like, everyone in the world. And, like, it's actually, like, we're already so segregated as a country. Like, we're not united at all. We're so divided. And, like, the answer is to divide us even more. Yeah. And it's like, as we've said in other episodes, and as we're going to say again and again today, like Black, Indigenous, people of color, trans people, like I fully believe with my whole chest, like they have the right to rule bitches out that like act crazy like this and are not actively trying to.
Yeah, their safety is more at risk.
Exactly. But for white women, we cannot be like, oh, we're swearing off all men. It's like, and white men included, like, we're never going to talk to them again when that is like literally what we need to be doing.
It's like, okay, we want to pick. It's almost like excusing ourselves from the problem, right? Like we said in the beginning, 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump, are putting their whiteness before their womanhood, which white women have done throughout history. And so we want to sit over here and point at white men and be like, you're the bad guy, you're the problem, you're da-da-da-da-da, and create this divide when we are actually far closer to like power and privilege as them. Right. And you know what I'm saying? Like those are our communities.
Basically fucking there, bitch. I know it's hard to understand, but like we really are. And it's like historically, it's like white women have enabled white men forever. Like literally forever. It's like we're no better than them at some point. Yeah. Like we're really not. And it's like, saying they're the enemy is just not the answer at all. And ruling out a whole gender, because I know it like hurts for me to say it, but like some men like really are trying. Like they really are trying to be better across all ethnicities, races, whatever. Like they're not all bad. So it's just like, you can't, and it's I know some of these bitches, maybe not all of them, but some of them love their dad or their brother. And it's just like,
or have a liberal guy friend. And it's like, this is the thing, right? And we've become so divided amongst women in our version of feminism, and I would argue white feminism, that demonizes men so much and is so like worried about victim blaming and stuff like that, that we're like, oh no, like we get all passes, we get all exclusions from ever interacting with them, just cut them out, da-da-da-da, when a lot of it is performative and we're not really doing it.
Yeah, and I'm so guilty of that. Like literally, I can't even tell you, like in college and high school and like maybe even a little bit now still, it's like, oh, white men are the worst. Like, oh my God.
And this is like, I feel insane saying this because I feel like I'm coming to this conclusion after doing this podcast, talking about gender. Now we're talking about whiteness, all of this stuff. It's like the manosphere, the right, they have insane, extreme ideologies, right? But I think we can all agree that there has not really been a space for white men in this culture that is like accepting on the left. Like there really isn't. All the podcasts that are celebrating their masculinity, positive masculinity in any forms, are on the right. And if we just continue to yell, you're trash, I'm not dating you, I'm not fucking you, I'm not until you get your shit together, we are pushing ones that could have been allies further away because we're stonewalling them. And I also I want to acknowledge that I know this is a lot of the rhetoric that the right uses as like feminism killed, you know, the nuclear family and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think that's what it is. But like, I think our feminism in general is, especially white women's feminism, is in a tragic place right now.
Yeah, no,
it's counterproductive. Like, it's counterproductive.
And I don't know if you told me this, we said this in an episode, but yeah, it's like or I watched it somewhere, but some of the first pieces of media that like 12, 13-year-old boys watch is like thou who shall not be named in the manosphere shit. And it's like, we're actually creating such a dangerous world, like by not even giving them a chance and just like them thinking that we hate them already. And we are not talking about like horrible, abusive men. Like that, yes. Like we do not want to be a part of them. It's like, no. But we're talking about like your average, like white person. It's like, we cannot just rule them out and never talk to them again. Like that is, we're setting up such a dangerous world, even more so than it is now.
Yeah, because it's like, are white men gonna fuck up? Like, are you gonna be in a room and a white man's gonna say a sexist comment? I'm not saying excuse that comment, but yes, we can assume they're probably gonna do that based off of what they, but call them out and correct it. Like, to me, it's the same as whiteness. Like, when I'm with my black friends, do they know me being a white woman might fuck up? Like, not unlearn my whiteness enough might fuck up. Are they still accepting me with open arms into their community and giving a space for me to learn about them and grow with them and all of that stuff? Like, why are we as white women, like, I think it's just a place of privilege, so, like, stonewalling them. And it's like, even if you're not there yet in terms of your dealings with white men, like, and I'm not saying date them. I'm not saying you need to go fuck them and date them to all make this better. Like, I'm saying simple conversations. And Trump supporters is very different than your average, like, white liberal man, like, whatever. If you're not ready for that, at least pay attention to the white women community over here that is also a huge problem, and have conversations within your feminist white circles about, like, hey, maybe, like, we can still decenter men, and maybe we want to be celibate right now. Maybe we don't want to date men. Maybe we're in a space where talking to men based off of my past of, like, abuse, whatever, is not healthy or safe with me right now. But to move this movement forward, I need to have productive conversations with these women in my community. So going off of this, we have this amazing TikTok that we found that talks a little bit about the transphobia and everything that we were just talking about as well with 4B movement.
Let's talk about the conservative ideological overlap between the Korean 4B movement and the lesbian separatist movements of the 1960s and 70s. So lesbian separatism broadly was this idea that women should go live far away from men and only date each other, or if you're not a woman who's interested in women, just don't date anybody. And that would be a better society for women than one in which they lived with men. The Korean 4B movement, which translates to the Four No's, is a Korean feminist movement in which women reject dating, marrying, having sex with, or child rearing with men. In both of these movements, a significant portion of the adherents were or are transphobic. They view trans women as infiltrators to the women's movement. They also viewed women in romantic partnerships with men, regardless of how that relationship was going, as traitors to women. I want to highlight the conservative similarities between these two movements because it shows that you cannot get to a liberatory politic from exclusion. We as women cannot liberate ourselves from patriarchy simply by excluding men, nor are we entitled to safety and comfort away from patriarchy at the expense of anti-patriarchal men who will still be suffering under patriarchy. And if instead of actually working to dismantle patriarchy, what we do is just turn our backs on all men, we're basically agreeing with patriarchy that there is some biological essentialist difference between the genders, which there isn't. Now, I know some people are going to watch this TikTok and say, you said I have to date men now. I didn't say that. What TikTok did you just watch? Wasn't this one? What I am saying is that women can uphold patriarchy, men can oppose patriarchy, and no amount of sorting ourselves into silly little groups is going to free us from systemic oppression.
And this is honestly why I love TikTok. Like, this person is really fucking smart, and the way that they were able to put it into words just about these practices of exclusion on different groups of people within one big feminism picture upholds patriarchy. It doesn't dismantle it at all, even though, you know, with some of the 4B TikToks and the blue bracelet videos that we're going to get into, it's like you want to believe that it is well intended and they do want to dismantle those things, but it's actually not. And it's really not. It's like actually making it worse and saying like what the TikTok said, that you agree with the patriarchal belief that men and women are different and things like that. So yeah, the way that they said that and were able to articulate that, that is really a place that I would like to get to one day, because I agree with that, but I don't think I could have come up with that particular sentence on my own yet.
Yeah. And the way
which, like,
they
we're all on our
connected
journey.
that. Yeah, I mean, connecting the lesbian separatist movement and the transphobia.
Oh my God, I
of that
forgot about that. Shit was
the
hilarious,
4B
bitch.
movement and the transphobia,
Yeah.
and then bringing it all the way full circle to how we are reinforcing patriarchy by excluding men. It's like the way that.
Sorry, and they said, like, it reminded them of, like, how conservatives view things, actually.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah, I love that TikTok. And another one that I just wanted to talk about in terms of exclusion and not doing the thing that you think you're doing, I found this TikTok from this woman talking about the 4B movement and shaving heads and how this is fucked up as well.
So this woman started with saying, to the women shaving their head for the 4B movement, you say you're shaving your head so, quote, men won't want you. But does that mean that men shouldn't want women that have struggled with hair loss due to alopecia or chemo? Your actions are very selfish and it's only affecting the women that have struggled with hair loss. Should we not be able to feel loved by a man? Should men not want us because we're bald? Y'all are making it seem like being bald is a bad thing, and it's really aggravating me. People make fun of bald people on a daily basis, yet don't want to be made fun of for being overweight, quote, ugly, etc. I have fought too long and hard to normalize bald women. Us women with hair loss don't take your words kindly, and in fact, you're definitely making it harder for us to feel loved. So please, before you go shave your head, think of the women who have went through traumatic experiences, losing their hair, learning how to love ourselves again, allowing others to love us, and actually feeling loved by others. Y'all are undoing the work bald women have worked so hard on. Wow. I'm going to be honest. I didn't even know about the shaving your head videos. And yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah. And it's like rejecting these feminine beauty standards or whatever by rejecting them in protest and, you know, making yourself quote unquote ugly to men. You're cutting out an entire group of people and also calling them ugly. So therefore by excluding them, you're reinforcing patriarchy. And I saw this other video by this woman too that had a shaved head, and she was like, guys, don't shave your head because I shave my head and men want me just as much, if not more. Like, they low-key have a fetish for it. And that's true. Like, in the underground, there's hella, like, girls and non-binary people with shaved head. And I swear the men go, like, crazy for that shit. Like, it's a fetish. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but when we do these acts, it's so centered in our experience as white women, you know, and I know it started in South Korea, but I'm focusing on how it's played out in America. We're so focused on our experience as cis heterosexual white women, able-bodied women, that it's like you're fucking over the people that you say that you're in solidarity with. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
I know. And it's like, I don't know if this is the same thing, bro, but, like, when I was like, I'm going to grow out my armpit hair as, like, men repellent, but, like, I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I really did. I loved my armpit hair, but, like, that's kind of giving.
I mean, yeah, it's like you're saying it in a quirky way, but yeah, to say that the book Man Repellent, that was like a book, and that's come under a lot of criticism for, like, girl boss, white feminism, all of that stuff too, because it's like, okay, so now you're saying that, like, men don't, you know, like, you're reinforcing this shit. You think you're doing something, but you're really doing the opposite.
Right. And it's because white women always, like you said, they always center themselves in it. They don't even, like, think about that. And it's like, oh, I didn't mean to. But it's like the mistake was just not thinking about it critically in that way. Like, just, like, not just going right to TikTok. I'm going to shave my, like, it's so crazy.
No, but
bro.
I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw, the first time I saw the shaving head thing, I was in a rough place emotionally when I saw the election. And if you guys knew what my personal life has been like these past, like, 2 months, it's funny because it's a fucking wreck. So part of me, like, I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to have
kind
my
of giving,
Britney
like,
Spears Spears moment. Like, I just wanted to, more from my, like, place of, like, mental whatever.
You felt like doing something
I
like
was like,
that.
I
so
need
drastic
an excuse
might,
to do a drastic thing, but I'm not going to shave my head,
it's
guys.
like, dyeing your hair is not enough. Like, let me just cut it all off.
Yeah, but insane.
Because I do think, like, there's been a moment, especially for a lot of queer lesbians, it's like shaving your hair off was an act of protest because you wanted to embrace your own masculinity and all these things. And it's like they're taking away from that too. Like, it's a beautiful thing to want to shave your hair, or that you needed to, or your hair fell out and you're embracing your beauty now. And then to go and make those TikToks, it's like, damn, like you really just are eliminating all of that.
It can be symbolic too, like, you know, shaving your head, like getting rid of the past. Like, a lot of people do that to bring in a new era.
Hair holds memory.
There's a lot of ways to shave your head symbolically, but the problem is when you start to say, like, because men find it unattractive, that's what I'm doing. And it's like, whoa, that's a really generalized statement that reinforces patriarchy.
That is the exact problem. Yes.
So we have this other amazing TikTok that I would like to discuss as well.
Women who look like me were posting on this app about how it's okay that their boyfriend disagrees with them politically. And now I wake up this morning and you guys are talking about a 4B movement, a movement that completely, radically decenters men. We as a demographic could not even do step fucking 1. And now you guys are thinking that we're gonna go to step 15? 69% of white women voted for that man in Georgia yesterday. 69%. And I don't want to hear anybody that looks like me, oh, well, I didn't vote for him. No, this is a group project. This was a group project. We all failed. We all hold some responsibility to this. Until we as a demographic realize that we have always been safer with other women than we ever have been with white men, I don't know how we go from here. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about how other demographics shifted towards Donald Trump. That's not my place to talk about right now. I'm looking at the ones that look like me, that were bragging on this app about how, oh, my boyfriend voted for Trump, but it's okay. Complicit. That is really the only word. And at this point, you can't even say that it's ignorance. It's not ignorance.
Emphasis on it's a group project.
Yeah.
That's what I've been trying to get across in my TikToks, in my own brain. We as white liberal women are no better than the white women that voted for Trump. We are, in fact, are the same. And we do all hold responsibility in that. And that was funny. Like, it made me laugh. You couldn't even get to step 1. And now you're going to, and why is it the same people that have said those things about, oh, it's okay for my boyfriend, that want to do 4B all of a sudden? And I have to think that it's like, maybe like they realized that they fucked up. Yeah. And now they're just taking it out of like a drastic measure to like fix it, but it's not giving what it's supposed to give because they can't jump like 80 million healing steps. Like, you have to, you know.
It isn't even healing all the way too. Like, completely going 4B is not like, you know.
Not for the reasons they're, you know.
Right. Like, it's not, again, giving what it's supposed to be giving. And like, yeah, when she said the Georgia thing, I'm like, I live in Georgia, white woman in Georgia. Like, that number of women that voted, like,
babe.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm 4B, and not like having success with changing men. White women are the best positioned, I think, to change white men's minds in a lot of ways. I mean, you can argue that different men of different races can change them better. I don't know. I think it heavily depends. At least white men are like, you know, more close to our communities, families, all of that. I think we are the best positioned, honestly.
And it's because of white supremacy and like how we say our whiteness is bigger than our woman.
Right.
So that's why we are the ones that can change their mind the most.
Yeah, exactly.
Or another liberal white man to a Republican white man.
Exactly. And even if you don't want to like start there with the white men, like focus on the women first before we go pointing the finger at over there. And before we go, like, you can't change that you didn't break up with your boyfriend and maybe you do want to break up with him now. Great. But like jumping to that before you like maybe talk to like the bitches at brunch or something which we have a TikTok. I stole that from the TikTok that's coming up in a minute.
Really? Yeah. That's funny though. I like that though. The bitches at brunch. That's real.
Right. So
that's real.
So we're going to get a little bit more into the 4B movement, but we're going to talk about white feminism, which we've already been talking about, but we're going to get into it more. And first, I want to put on the screen this demographic breakdown, and you see that 60% of white men voted for Donald Trump, and what is it? 37% voted for Kamala Harris, the biggest demographic. And then I'm looking at men specifically. Latino men, you know, pretty fucking high as well, 55%. There's an epidemic among Latino men as well, but we're not really focusing on that right now. And then black men, you have only 21% that voted for Donald Trump and 77% that voted for Kamala Harris. So when we're talking about decentering men, like, where do black men play into that? Like, I didn't see the demographics for Asian or Asian Pacific men or anything like that as well. But, like, again, whiteness. We are only seeing gender with whiteness. We're like, men are the problem. Fucking less black men voted for Donald Trump than white women. Guys.
I know. And that's what I've seen a lot of TikToks too, and a lot of people of color, black women, saying it is so clear that you only see white men, because why is it 4B rule off all men? It's, you really mean white men. It's like, I guess you don't date men of color or something. And it's like, that's something so obvious to people of color, and white women are not able to see that. You know?
I'm not gonna lie to you, because like I said, last man I was with was a black man that I wasn't with him when the election happened. I don't think he voted. I highly doubt that he would have voted, but he leaned towards Trump. So I, in my head, had a false perception based on my circle and his friends who was voting for Trump too. So I honestly was categorizing all men as, oh, it's an epidemic among black men as well, based off of my circle. And so it was relieving to see these numbers, and also was a wake up call for me to be like, bitch, get outside of your fucking bubble. Like, you know, like I was excusing it to a certain degree because I was like, oh, like it's his experience. It's but I'm like, that is not the predominant thing. Like, I just happen to be with one of the fucked ones. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's like, it's at a white woman being with a black man, you have the tendency to excuse it a little bit more, just like, because what you said, it's like you'll never be able to understand his blackness fully and his experience. And so who are you to be like telling him about what Donald Trump's racist ideologies are?
He genuinely thought that Donald Trump would do better for black people in America. Like, that was his belief, and that is why he voted for him. I think that's false. I can't really speak to that as a white woman, but like, it was a little bit more iffy. But it's also like, looking at these numbers, I'm like, okay, because I felt like I was going insane a little bit in that relationship. Like, oh, I don't have the right, but also I know in my heart that this is incorrect, and none of the black women that I'm around are voting for Trump at all or anything like that. But it is like
in the
your
22%.
Yeah, the very small 22%. I mean, look at this graph, guys. Like, it's really insane. Like, white women
7% of black women voted for him.
Yeah, like, we're like, Latino men beat us out by a couple percentage that voted for Trump, but like, we're right up there in the top fucking 3. Black men aren't even close.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just,
so which men are you ruling out?
Right. So we asked,
like, just be honest about that though. Like, if you're, you know what I mean? Just be honest about that, because it really, like, the othering and all this shit, like, it's loud as fuck right now. I do understand it to a degree. Like, I will be so honest, I didn't really realize people saying 4B, and like having men be generalized when they're really talking about white men. I didn't really even peep that until a woman of color made a TikTok explaining that, and I was like, oh shit. Like we're no better than you. Like, literally. Honestly, it's like we have those oh shits and like, I'm so stupid, but it's like, no, we're just like learning, we're growing, like, we need to just do the work more and think about it more, not just like every time a fucking catastrophe happens. Because catastrophes are happening every fucking day. Right. They're just like smaller because we're all little ants and we don't see it.
Yeah. Or
but
we
it's
have
happening
our
every single
and
day.
Yeah.
So we don't need to think about it. We don't. We have to choose to do that. Like, BIPOC people don't get to make that choice.
Right.
So the next poll we asked y'all was, do you think liberal white women center themselves too much in their advocacy? 70% said yes, and 30% said no. I definitely think, like, as a white person, like, living under and actively contributing to white supremacy every day, it's like, you have to make the active choice not to center yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they do. I think I've done it in the past.
Same.
And maybe
and probably
now,
continue
like,
to on accident.
Yeah.
Like we're actively unlearning it every single day.
Actually today, I think I did it. Like in a conversation with two people.
Right.
So
it's not like we're not laughing because it's funny, but because it's like, like we got to take ownership over it. And it's like, I don't want to make
I'm done hiding that shit, because it's not like, no one's looking down on you like, oh, bad job. Because if you don't fuck up and if you're not able to articulate like what your first thought is when you think about this shit, like you're not gonna unlearn anything. Like you literally have to do that. And so I'm not gonna be like afraid about that anymore, because that's like white guilt, and that is like wrong sides of history talking in my brain.
And that's why it's important to have conversations about this stuff too with other white women, because it's like when you just are doing it too much from a performative position, when you're around like communities of color and stuff like that, then it can come off as like, it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like too much. Like, it's almost like they're like, okay, like you're doing a lot right now, and I don't want to be emotionally exhausted with you realizing that you're a privileged white bitch. Like, you know, like you need to have, and thank God I have you for this stuff. Like we talk to each other about these things, but I'm realizing more and more how much I do need more white women in my life to talk about this stuff too, and also to teach them, to learn from them too, because it can't always fall on, you know, a Black woman to be like, hey, you're doing this, or to just feel uncomfortable all the time. Like, do you know how many times we're probably making people uncomfortable, not even realizing
just by
it?
existing?
And then they just like, they're just so used to it, like tired of it, that they just don't want to say anything, because they're just like, you know, that's who, just like we are with men, you know? So it's like, put it into perspective. We're doing the same shit. And I also do want to say, like, I don't want you guys to think that I'm just like checking who voted for what, because I really don't care like individual names or like anything like that. But when I was taking a scroll, like a gander through the polls, I did notice that the majority of the profiles that voted no were white faces in the profile pictures for this poll, and for ones coming later too.
Oh, on Instagram.
On Instagram for the polls, yeah. So I'm just saying, like, the gap. The gap in understanding, like, white women thinking, oh no, I don't center myself in my advocacy, versus
you are.
Was some,
just
like,
by saying you don't, you
some
are.
color differences in the polls.
That's very
not
interesting.
completely. You know, I think some people know, but some people are a little bit oblivious.
Yeah. And we're not literally judging anyone,
because we do it. We've done it.
We do it too. We've done it. We do it. And like all we can call on is like for ourselves to continue on learning and do better, and like expect that from other white women too. Like you can be not judging someone and still like check them and call on them to be better. Like our feelings getting hurt. It like, no, dude. Like, no more feelings getting hurt. It's not about our individual souls. Like, it's literally like,
and it's okay
we are
if your
white
feelings
women.
get hurt, but deal with that shit, you know,
like
not
privately with your dog. Like, yes. Right.
And not
it's
making
okay,
it someone else's
problem, bro.
But we have a couple of TikToks from people talking about this as well.
I know we've all been seeing the statistics that have come out about which demographics have supported Trump. And I know there's been a lot of generalizations made. I've seen so many women, specifically white women, which is weird, talk about how like they're not going to get with any men. They no longer fuck with men, like the 4B movement, which I feel people are using too loosely. But along with that, it's so fascinating, right? Because the dissonance that white women have with their own demographic, like, if anything, you should focus on white women more than anything, because they have consistently been one of the, if not the biggest demographic to vote for Trump. But along with that, when you generalize men, it just shows that you see them through a white lens, because Black men showed out in record numbers for Kamala Harris. Along with that, so did the LGBT plus community. So that means any man that is categorized as transgender, bisexual, pansexual, any facet of identities did not vote for Trump. And those are things to keep in mind when making these generalizations, because it's kind of like when people generalize the South and are just like, fuck the red states. And it's like, but you realize like the most vulnerable demographics are the ones who didn't vote, right? Like you realize like people who have experiences with like convictions or prison, people who were working that day, people who couldn't afford to get to the booths, etc., or weren't educated enough to decide, like, the people affected by, like, natural disasters, they were the ones that'll be targeted in the event of more harm. And they're the ones that are in community with you. So just some things to think about.
My question is for white women specifically, right? Looking at this election, 2020, 2016, what is the version of the 4B movement for your best friend, your aunt, your sister, your cousin, right? Like all the white women who continue over and over to choose their whiteness over their womanhood as their best interest. I'm just asking. But anyway, all the rest of the women, very wise to be practicing the 4B movement.
And I know when you said it earlier, you were referring to this TikTok.
Yeah,
and literally,
I love this creator.
Same, like, what is it? Basically, Betsy and Frederick T. Joseph. Like, shout out to both of you as creators. And then there's another woman later down in the episode that also, like, opened my eyes to shit, because I'm not gonna sit here and act like I looked at the polls and I was like, that is my initial thought. Like, it was seeing other people's content, and then I was like, oh shit, like, this needs to be a conversation. And I think that's what inspired both of us to do the white women who voted for Trump episode. And it's, in hindsight, like you said, we should have done that pre-election. We should have been doing this. We should have been talking about these things. And you feel, again, like the white guilt of, like, fuck, I should have, like, been doing it. But, like, these a lot of what's inspired this episode has come from Black creators educating us, you know?
Yeah, and it's like I wanted to completely exclude the white Republican conservative people from my life. Like, those same exclusionary practices that we were talking about that white feminism does, like, I hated them. And, like, it's hard not to hate them, you know, because it's hard to understand, like, how they voted that way and how they feel that way. But I do think actually, like, learning from them, like, why they did, even if you still don't believe in it, like, has helped me a little bit.
Yeah.
And just, like, feeling like it really is, like, my role, like, in this society to not exclude them and actually, like, invite them in. Not every single day, but, like, not completely exclude them. But Betsy is a fantastic creator, and they consistently talk about political issues, social issues, all of these things. So you guys should definitely follow them. But yeah, the other TikTok is like, why putting your whiteness before your womanhood. And it's like, maybe they like feel more protected, like if they go that way, even though it doesn't make sense.
Well, and even,
or they can maintain their unearned privilege that way, or.
And even like this TikTok was interesting to me because he's almost like saying like, okay, what is the version of 4B for the white women in your life, like your white aunts, and like 4B we know is all about exclusion. So it's like, is he saying that like we should be excluding them? And so that, I pulled some of the comments from that video that we'll just put on the screen. And somebody said, baby, I cut people off in all areas so fast these days. I no longer accept, agree to disagree. I would rather have 0 friends than those people as friends. Another woman said, my closest friends and I are on the same page. It's the acquaintances that seem like good people that I know I need to keep at an arm's length now. I will smile and be polite, but that's it. Someone else said, I cut them out. I took the morning to grieve, and then I started cutting out liabilities. Someone else said, lead by example. I broke out of the conservative bubble I was raised in. If I can do it, so can they. It just may take more time. I know that's not the answer a lot of people want to hear. And I just like, I don't know, like, because I think the version of 4B, at least for me, that I know that I've been practicing with the white conservative, moderate, Republican, Trump-leaning people in my life is to 4B them, cut them out. I don't talk to them, maybe see them at holidays, probably get in an argument with them. But even then, I only go home for holidays, like rarely. And it's not that much of my family. But like, I don't, even seeing this, like the one where she's like, I will smile and be polite, but that's it. I'm like, completely defeating the whole fucking purpose. Like the solution is, I think, to call them in, you know, like not to cut them off. And just like we said, exclusion doesn't work with the patriarchal stuff. I don't think it works with this either. Like, you have the privilege of like just being like, oh, we don't talk about politics. Like, it's fine. When you have more of an opportunity to make change in these people's lives than maybe anyone else does.
And the level of discomfort you might feel doing so doesn't even compare to the level of discomfort that trans, queer people, BIPOC people feel just like walking outside. So it's like, think about it like that, you know?
Yeah.
And the last comment, the woman said, I came out of the conservative family that I was raised in. If I can do it, so can they. And I like that. Like that, honestly, I believe that they can do it too. And you can't do everything to make them go out of it. Ultimately, it does have to come from within them to want to do better and want to unlearn all the fucked up shit that hasn't even really been serving them in the way they might think it has.
Yeah.
But like the least we can do is try, right? Like it doesn't
because
seem
it's like,
that
to me,
bad.
even like blocking those people, to me, is like, will that prevent, especially for us as people who have a platform that post a lot of liberal stuff like on the daily, it's like, that blocks them from seeing my content when like their algorithm won't generally let them see it. And so even if it's not like I'm having a Sunday dinner with all the white conservative people I know to have a real conversation about stuff, blocking them is still creating like another divisive wall between them being able to even engage with the other side on their own. And I think that is like the minimum to what we should be doing, you know? And I'm not saying go out to your most fucking January 6th uncle and be like, let's have a chat. And then you're not really safe to do that in certain senses, but there are people that, like this woman said, you can just like be polite about it, keep at an arm's length, whatever. Like maybe not, maybe invite them to brunch, have some casual conversation, and then like tiptoe some lines, like put it in a little bit, you know?
And I feel like you can kind of tell if someone is like a truly evil person or if they've just like made a lot of mistakes and are
or they're
like
not educated.
Right, or they're not educated. So I think it's like, there's definitely things that we can do. And I honestly went through my Instagram that I've had since high school and looked at Donald Trump's page and like see who I follows
that's
him.
Smart.
And I was shocked by like a lot of white women that I was friends with in high school that are following him. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also an ex of mine refollowed him. So that's crazy. Anyways. I mean, I didn't want to look at that. I was just like, I'm just going to see. But anyways, so maybe I should like reach out to those friends and just like see why, like not yell at them. Like, you know what I mean?
But like start a conversation. I mean, I've been having a conversation with a conservative woman that I used to be best friends with in high school. Like we used to party all the time together. She's, you know, different now. Like she's very MAGA, and we've had conversations, and like I don't think she's backing down from voting Republican at all, but we've had conversations about transgender people and about abortion that she's kind of been like, oh, I didn't know that. And like, I'm not convinced yet that it's going to cause her to vote differently. And there's still a lot of like iffy stuff in that, but I'm like, at least I'm providing an alternative, and we have that like history of friendship that like maybe she'll hear me out, you know?
Right. One day.
Yeah.
Or it'll be something she'll at least think about and know about moving forward.
Yeah. And when she engages with media on the right, maybe she'll be like, oh, this is sensationalizing it because Fiji told me. You never know. Yeah. That's all I can hope.
Or she'll see someone else say what you said miraculously on her timeline. You never know.
Right. We don't need to like go into the conversation being like, they need to change their mind immediately. It's just about like actively, like when you feel yourself being like, I don't want to have that conversation, challenging yourself to get a little bit uncomfortable and maybe saying just a little something, because that's the bare minimum.
And I know this is wrong, but like part of me is like, well, being nice to these white women that voted for Trump feels like I'm not doing the wrong thing, because shouldn't I hate them? They voted for something horrible.
But that's privilege.
But it's like, that's wrong. Yeah. And so I'm like, that is like I've been feeling that. I'm like, oh no, like what if someone sees this and thinks like Autumn and Fiji are being so nice
but that's
to
why
people
it's like, then to you, your activism is only performative. And I'm not saying that just to you, because I feel the same way.
No, I know, but it's like, yes. And that's what I've like realized. And it's like, it's not about what people look at us and what we're saying, you know? But it's like, that's what I'm talking about, like that innate like whiteness shit. Like it takes so long to completely get rid of it. But I do think fucking up, acknowledging it, and then not doing it again, like, is all you can really do, you know?
Yeah.
So, want to say that. The article's called What is White Feminism and How Does It Harm Women of Color? It's a feminism that prioritizes achieving equality for white women, insisting that their equality will open up doors for all other women. White feminism acts to homogenize feminism, to assert mainstream dominant feminism as the feminism, which is not true. This is an act of white supremacy, says Beck. She goes on to say that this dynamic often means that where the needs of women of color, transgender women, disabled women, or Muslim women conflict with that of white supremacy, their needs will be dismissed or subjugated. And this as a dynamic that occurs both on a structural level and on a more individual basis. The one Black woman in the feminist meeting has her ideas dismissed because they are too niche, i.e., only for non-white women, Beck explains. There are countless examples of white feminism in action, including in the days of the suffragette movement and fighting for white women to vote. But a notable example in recent years is the Me Too movement. This was a movement that became headline news in Hollywood in 2017 after allegations surrounding Harvey Weinstein began to emerge. But the prominent voices in this movement were famous, privileged white actors. And on top of this, Me Too wasn't even a new movement. It was actually started all the way back in 2006 by a Black woman named Tarana Burke, who was rarely mentioned in the conversation and wasn't even included when the women of Me Too were named Time's Person of the Year. Damn.
Exactly. And like, that's how I think we're doing it with the 4B movement. We're not only whitewashing it because it started in South Korea, but we're also just making it like our own brand of like white feminism, you know?
Yeah,
so it's like, and
it's
where
so
do,
true.
and I know that there are Black women, there are trans women, there are BIPOC women in general that are for 4B. So like, I don't want to exclude that. And like, that is a thing as well. But I just think the predominant narrative that I've seen on TikTok is a lot of cis het white women.
And it's the one we can properly address and speak to. Yeah. And I just think like number one, if you're considering 4B, like do the research in South Korea. Watch that woman's video about how she couldn't even find anything on Google when she Googled it where she lives. And it's like, think about that and also think about why you even want to do it. Because if it's an active protest, if you've been harmed by men and you just can't take it anymore, like I feel like there's a lot of different reasons we're all doing it, but no one's talking about that. And they're just saying 4B locked and loaded. Like we're not trying to demonize 4B, but it's wrong for some of the reasons that white women are doing it and the way they're commodifying it like online.
Yeah, because up until this election, a lot of what was pushed about 4B was predominantly, and it's not funny, but like the way white women were looking at the dating circle and looking at men only wanting to be in situationships and not respect, like, and I'm like if that is the extent of our feminism, is the men want to be in situationships and you want a relation, like
bitch, I want to be in a situation. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like, it's so wrong. And then you look at the origins in South Korea. It's like, okay, like, are we putting tissue paper in the children's bathrooms at school?
Right.
To my knowledge, we're not.
And even South Korean women in South Korea think that the movement is exaggerated.
Right, even so. And so it's like, it's not the answer. It's not going to achieve this unified equality white feminists so speak that they want, you know?
It's reinforcing patriarchy.
The term white feminism is honestly crazy because it's like if you just look at me like walking around, bopping around in the street, it's like I am kind of the face of white feminism. Yeah. Like we all are. Like you can't hide from that. And no blue bracelet is going to make that better, bitch. Or solidarity in 4B. Like, it's not gonna change anything.
And that's why I keep coming back. I feel like we need a new movement with a new fucking name because, and I don't want to disrespect the feminism that came before us because, like, I say I'm an intersectional feminist. Like, I believe in the feminism, sex positive that came from a lot of Black queer women that I think really pushed the feminist movement forward to what it's supposed to be. But there's still, like, within feminism's past and history, there's a lot of exclusion. And even the term feminism, I think for where we need to go to include men, like genderism, like, I don't know, like something else.
Right.
Like,
Genderism.
we need something else that I think includes, that calls men in, that calls trans people in because it's been so exclusionary that I don't know. It needs to be...
And there are people working to do that, but it's not like making the mainstream. It's not like reaching like all the TikTok trends. Like it's not, people are not getting it and they're not like doing the work to get it. So,
and it is hard to like, I mean, I don't really, well, we have a little bit of a section at the end when we talk about like what we can do in our own communities of white people to like talk about these issues. But like a lot of what I've seen about Democrats and the left and why we failed in this election too is that like, I mean, a lot more people on the left are educated and have degrees and are able to talk about these complex issues. And like, in some senses, if you're a BIPOC person or a trans person, it's not necessarily a complex issue. It's your lived experience.
Right.
But for white people who feel like anything is oppression because they know anything other than privilege, I think like, I know I need to work on figuring out a way to talk about these issues in a simpler form that builds on each other. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just come out the cut even talking about white supremacy to someone who just voted for Donald Trump. They're gonna be like, whoa, what the, like, you know?
Like,
and it's unfortunate, and I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm just saying that if we want actual change and progress, like, we need to meet them where they're at least in terms of language.
Right.
You know?
I really do.
So next, we're going to get into a little bit of Trump's version of feminism, which I know sounds insane, but Trump has used versions of white feminism and TERF in his campaign, which is kind of crazy when you pull back and think about it. But this is why we need to engage in the feminism that we're all practicing.
He's also said he loves women before and women love him. Like,
exactly. He has tried to appeal to women voters in particular ways.
Crazy, bro.
But first, we asked you guys, is it surprising to you that 53% of white women voted for Trump and only 21% said yes, 79% said no? And I put no because honestly, like, no, I put yes. I put yes, it was surprising to me because it was until I like looked at stuff and it shouldn't be. Bro, and then when we were doing the research, I was like white women have only voted predominantly for a Democrat, I think 2 years since the 90s or the 80s or something insane. So it's like, but that just shows my privilege and how I've been looking at things as like, oh, like I'm obviously better than everyone else. So like,
and I'm ashamed that I was surprised. I think I put yes too. And I said that in my TikTok, like I'm ashamed that I was surprised. It's not surprising. It shouldn't be surprising. It shouldn't be. But I think the fact that we were surprised, like, was a bit of a wake-up call for us. And so at least it gave us that. You know what I mean? Like, you have to fuck up to, like, reevaluate and go back and, like, be like, okay, I was centering myself in this, or, like, I, you know, have hated men so much in the past, I just go to blame them first when it's, like, the calls in the home backyard or whatever.
And I'm so tied to my own identity and what I believe that I can't possibly think that...
Because we've excluded them, so of course we don't think about them. Like, but it's wrong, and we should think about them because, like, we're the biggest voting block. Like, that, our shit really fucking matters. Like, you know?
Yeah, and like you said, the white always comes before the woman, and, like, we're silly for thinking the woman comes before the white. Because it doesn't. But I don't think we acknowledge it because it's subconscious even within ourselves.
I agree.
So I found this really interesting article called Trump is Pulling from White Feminism's Playbook. All right.
What the fuck?
And this is pre the determination of the election results. This is when he was still campaigning. But they said, in the last few weeks, we have seen the Republican ticket making a host of promises to women to, quote, protect them, to give them, quote, choices that will help them withstand, quote, cultural pressure, and to ensure a world where they will, quote, no longer have anxiety. This woman-specific messaging from Trump and Vance reflects an important shift in our political culture. Feminism has achieved an unprecedented level of popularity. In a time when 61% of women in the United States identify as feminists, it has become difficult to reach women without making some kind of claim about understanding their plight. So Trump knew that he needed to win over women somehow, and at least white women. The article says, yet they are now addressing what has traditionally been thought of as feminist issues, such as sexual assault, Title IX, and the struggles of moms. Their gloss on the issues is unsurprisingly racist, transphobic, and indifferent to economic inequality, but they seem to be banking on the idea that elite women will mistake the candidates' investments in oppressive systems with investments in the fate of women. Trump has, in recent weeks, repeated the message that he will be a woman's protector. This position has been roundly criticized for being condescending to women and for being creepy, coming from an alleged rapist. But less has been said about which women Trump and his surrogates claim to be protecting and whom he claims to be protecting them from. Trump's original protector claims were embedded within a set of dog whistles about men of color. His specific promise was to make presumably white women feel, quote, safe at the border and, quote, safe on city streets. The strategy of associating black and brown men with rape also has a longer history within white feminism. Feminists in the late 19th and early 20th centuries actively argued that, quote, other men's treatment of women was a reason that the countries in the global South needed to be colonized. Trump and Vance borrowings from white feminism extend to another domain in which they are using the language of protection, women's sports. Vance recently claimed that excluding trans women in sports would prevent his daughter from being, quote, brutalized, repeating a false image of the trans woman as a violator of women's safe spaces. This concept has recently resurged since its initial popularity in feminist separatist circles in the 1970s, like that TikTok that we talked about. The idea that feminists are the enemies of stay-at-home moms has its root in the mommy wars of the 1990s. Conservatives of the time managed to block feminist efforts to secure child-free care by portraying the feminist as a judgmental career woman who looked down her nose at motherhood. The legacy of this period endures in the popular feminist claim that the aim of feminism is to respect individual women's choices, that women should be able to make decisions about their lives without fear of judgment. Yet a feminism focused on non-judgment continues to serve only the most privileged women, since the, quote, choices not to work outside the home has only ever been available to the well-off. So we see Trump trying to appeal to white feminists in a lot of ways, because like we talked about, and even in our Trump episode, we're like, how can these women side with him? Because he's speaking to their issues as white women. He's like, I'm going to protect you from these evil rapists, sexual assaulters who are not, like, the crime rates are much lower, and he is a sexual assaulter, rapist, but he's saying, you know, it's rooted in racism.
Right. Like, he uses racism to appeal to white women.
Right.
We're over here like, how did he do that? Yeah.
Right. He uses it. And then same with stay-at-home moms. Like, he's using it to be like, you know, oh, we're going to make protections for you, you stay-at-home moms, blah, blah, blah. Well, only a higher class of white women are even able to do that. You have to be in a certain financial bracket to do that. Same with the transphobia. He's protecting these white women, the most privileged women, from the least privileged women.
Right.
You know, he's flipping it.
And I liked how the article said that using black and brown men as, like, looking at them as rapists and predators, like, has been a part of white feminism, like, forever. And he's playing to that exact thing, like, at the border, and, like, the fear that he's put into white women who have children and, like, young daughters or whatever. It's like they're not able to see the racism in it, though. Like, they just believe him and thinks he's a protector of all women.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know he's not.
Yeah.
But that's why they did it. Like, because it's like, I was always like, why is the economy more important than, like, your own body? Like, if you don't give a fuck about anyone else, like, what about your own body? But it's like, to them, like, he is protecting their body in a way. by closing all the rapists out, even though he is one. Like, it's
if they're
ridiculous.
white suburban moms that
Right.
have already had kids and have their tubes tied or
misogynist
postmenopausal and they can't have children, they're not concerned about reproductive rights. You know, like, that doesn't hit anything for them. They're concerned about their whiteness.
Kids' reproductive rights in the future.
Right.
Like,
right.
if it's about them, like, I don't get that. Or their education, like with the Board of Education and even critical race theory, like, none of that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, I think, and I honestly, like, I'm just coming to that, like, right now. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why, like, because we kept saying, like, he appealed to them in terms of blah, 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 blah. So it's like they did feel protected. They don't feel that he's coming at their rights because he's protecting them, quote unquote. But it's all very white and individualized. It's like they're only caring about themselves.
They're only caring about white women's rights.
To, like, support other people. That's the problem.
Because the white comes before the woman.
Because I'm not concerned for myself. Like, I'm really not. Like, yes, my queer identity as a woman, but it's like,
we're very protected as far as stuff goes. Like,
I didn't vote for Kamala Harris because of me. So I could, like, live a good life. Like, that's not why I voted for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was for everyone else.
And I wanted to show this too because I think it's key to know in terms of, like, when we do want to have conversations with other white women and just coming from the place of being like, oh, how can you not get it? You're a woman. But then seeing how these women might even consider themselves, maybe not use the term feminist, but consider themselves advocates against sexism and see Donald Trump as an advocate against sexism. So it's like the way that you're approaching these conversations has to be, like, a little bit different. And we also asked
are they not watching the same thing we are?
No, they're not. I mean, we know the news is divided as fuck.
Yeah.
You know, like, when I was talking to the couple the couple Republican white women that I was talking to, like, we're on two completely different algorithms, different sources. Like, I was sending sources and they were like, these are opinions. I'm like, they're literally not. These are literally facts. But, like, you know, there is a gap in education. We're just on different.
And it's perspectives. It's like, I don't know what it's like to grow up in Oklahoma with Trumpy parents. Like, I have no idea what that's like. Like, I'm so lucky that that wasn't me. But it's like, I'm just, like, overall, like, having more empathy, like, towards everyone. Like, trying to understand that it's like they were born that way, and like I grew up in, like, a queer interracial household, and I still have all the whiteness to unlearn. They grew up in, like, a bad household and still had all, like, it's like double, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I was given tools, you know what I mean? They aren't given tools. They don't even know it's, like, a thing because they live in, like, a white bubble.
It's an echo chamber. And that's what I'm saying. And that's why it's like, with certain people, and I'm not saying the extremists, and I'm not trying to excuse people, because there are people out here who are very racist, transphobic, know the other side,
and they know
don't
what they're
give
doing.
a fuck.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people, because again, like, we talked about it in, I think, the white women who voted for Trump, but the pedagogy of the oppressed, guys, that I'm obsessed with.
Pedagogy
of the oppressed by Paulo Freire says that, you know, the oppressor does not know anything besides where they live as the oppressor. The oppressor down here, the oppressor lives up here. You can say it's men, you can say it's white men, you can say it's white women when it comes to, you know, black women, BIPOC women, trans women, whatever. The oppressor, the privileged group, the group that has the power, does not know anything else besides what it's like to look off the fucking 14th floor balcony. They don't know what it's like to be on the 3rd floor, anything like that. Anytime the people below them get anywhere closer up, they feel like their power is being taken away. And if they're asked to go to the 3rd floor when they're on the fucking 14th floor, they're gonna be like, this is awful. Like, my view is terrible. Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want to engage with that because I'm so comfortable up here. So it's like, you know, when we put it into perspective like that, like, any time that you try to have conversations with certain people about their privilege, when they haven't learned through life experiences, when they haven't seen it play out in real time, racism play out in real time, transphobia, any of those things, I think it's really hard for them to get off the fucking 18th floor and ever imagine anything else. Like, they're like, I don't know that exists. I'm just looking up here.
Right. But yeah, so like you said, it's like there's evil people that know that he's doing all of these horrible things, racism, transphobia, classism, you name it, everything. And then there's people that their minds could be changed. And like, that's the people that we need to focus on, at least for now, like in the white women community.
Yeah.
And that's who we need to not target, but like literally reach a helping hand to.
Yeah.
Like, not to be all like spiritual, but that's really
Like, unite,
how it needs to be. And like
Yeah.
learning about the pedagogy of oppressed really is like, it's not an excuse for people to act like assholes.
Right.
But it is a reason. And it's like
It's
the
a
part
tool.
about how white supremacy affects white people too, and like makes them like insufferable and unable to get off the 13th floor. So
just like
it's
men
like,
in patriarchy, exactly, because it's like men are still oppressed under patriarchy because they're prevented from being their whole selves and seeing other people as human. Because when you're dehumanizing other people, you're dehumanizing yourself as well.
Yeah. But it's like, but race kind of overrules all in the United States. So it's like unlearning manhood versus unlearning whiteness. Like the whiteness is like way fucking deeper.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's why our whiteness is before our women and our gay and our sex worker, everything.
Everything.
It overrules everything.
Yes. So next we have some listener stories from you guys on this just topic in general. Someone said most women are on either end. They just want attention. And I think that's true. Like, even when we talk about even some liberal white women, could they be easily swayed in the next election with Trump and the ways he adjusts how he speaks to, you know, women with his version of feminism? Because I did see a TikTok that was like, you know, warning women to be on the watch for TERF ideology, because it's like, this is what's coming next. And the next thing that they're going to try to do is get you on the whole idea of like, oh, well, you know, transgender women don't have to worry about the abortion rights. And like, you know, something like that. They're going to try to turn you against each other. So be cautious.
Yeah, they have to worry about 10 million other things.
Right, exactly.
Not just, like, literally.
Yeah, like way less safe just going into a fucking bathroom, but okay, yeah.
But okay. Someone else said, counting on white women to be allies when they have arguably benefited the most from colonialism is hilarious. Not gonna lie, I don't know what people genuinely expected. They had a chance during the women's suffrage movement and threw slaves/black women under the bus.
Literally. And exactly, like white women have benefited from white supremacy, like more than anyone.
Right. Right.
Like white men first,
literally,
but yeah, then us. Like,
but to a degree, it's like maybe even we do, because I do feel like men take all like the heat for it, and white women just coast along making lemonade on the way. Like,
no,
you know
that's
what I mean?
a good point, because at least now society has cracked down on white men and been like, whatever, on the liberal side. Like, the liberal side has cracked down on white men.
But white women are like good.
We're just coasting along, like, men, don't look at us.
And you're hiding, yeah.
Like,
and it's like, yeah, no, seriously. I'll read, do you want me to read this long one? So someone else sent a really long story, and seriously, we appreciate you so much. Like, this is what we need, and like, this is like, we want this much of y'all's voice to be heard.
Please.
Like a whole, so like, thank you if you're listening. Thank you for submitting. This person said, truly so inspired by everything you have posted on this topic since the election. I want to say that as I have been thinking about it, I really truly believe that the biggest reason for the way white women vote is because they think it will exempt them from misogyny. Let's think about the ideas of the pick-me girl or cool girl. She performs for the male gaze because she's trying to separate from her own femininity, and thus escape men thinking she's uncool or stupid or not someone they want around. White women believe that if they conform to their oppressors and get male approval, they are exempt from the misogyny that women who don't do that face. As a simple example, if they laugh and go along with sexist jokes made in their presence, they won't be subjected to it themselves. It doesn't work that way. Women will never gain the respect of men, especially not by blindly following men to want and try to save themselves somehow. I believe this internalized misogyny also ties back directly to the gap in education and patterns we see around that in who people, men and women, voted for. Women are not taught that they have values unless men think they're cool, so they vote for their own oppression. I thought the Harris ad put out that was meant to remind middle-aged women that who they vote for is confidential was really powerful, and I wish more women saw it. I also wish I could tell every 20-something woman that the bum-ass dude they're in a situationship with isn't going to stop cheating or commit to them because she voted for Trump. Men simply do not see women as human or worthy of respect, period. Fuck, that eats, bro. That's crazy. But it's like, that's really like what we're saying too. And I'm not going to lie, like I kind of cheated. And like earlier today, I was like looking through the outline and I read just the one sentence about it, they think it will exempt it from misogyny. I was like, okay, I have to stop. Because that's like, again, like it seems like it could be simple, but it's like that didn't click for me until we started deep diving this. And like, I actually cared to actively listen to what women who are conservative, Trumpies, MAGA people, whatever, like actually thought. And comparing it to the pick me girl is so smart because it's like this shit is going to take them far enough to vote against their own oppression because they think
or vote against their own rights, vote for their own oppression. Yeah,
vote against their own rights and vote for their oppression. They think like men will give them like the fucking pass, but I don't know who this person is so right because they actually will probably respect you a lot less.
Yeah. And
not that it matters, not that that's the like big thing, but like just saying, like I don't know.
And this is the thing too, because this is where the intersection of it comes in, right? Because it's like exactly when you are a pick me in this sense and you're giving up your own rights to vote for men, they're not going to value you. They're never going to eventually bring up your issues. They're going to breadcrumb you along.
Yeah, they'll keep you along because you're falling in line.
They'll be like, oh yeah, we're listening. We're going to just put a little sprinkle here and there. But the line where she's like, white women believe that if they conform to their oppressors and get male approval, then they're exempt from the misogyny that women who don't do that face.
Yeah.
I want to take it a step further, though, and bring in the intersectionality and add whiteness to it, though, because as white women voting that way, you are protected by your whiteness. And if the whiteness comes before the woman, then you're more, and you have, like the other listener story before this said, white women have benefited a lot from colonialism because white women are behind, white men are the protectors, white women in their like femininity and fragility are like behind these men, and these men are like, oh, we'll protect you, we'll protect you, we'll protect you. So even though they're not advocating for your actual rights and your actual equality, they're still protecting you under white supremacy.
In a weird way, yeah.
So it's like, you know, you're not getting full, as a woman, you're voting directly against your oppression, but you're voting for your race.
They're really only protecting you so like another man can't have you. Like it's not even really about protecting you. Like it's all just like men. But yeah.
And keeping you in the cult of the nuclear family so you can stay home and take care of the babies and keep your role that serves men, ultimately.
Right. And I remember like even when I was dating that white woman who's like very Christian, like voted for Trump, like whatever, grew up a lot differently than me. Like I like tried to have honest conversations about Trump with her and be like, he doesn't love you. Like, I like, trust me, he doesn't. Like, and I tried to like,
especially
say
as
that,
a queer woman,
but I like did it in the wrong way because now that we've learned, like, I should have like
angry.
Because I was just, and I was like, I felt like bad for her in like a weird way. Like, I know I shouldn't, but like I did because I was like, you really like don't understand like what's going on. And it's like because of like your own experience. And like, I'm sorry that you're like not able to see that. Like it does make me sad to an extent, but like not nearly as sad as like for like my immigrant friends or like the people that this is like actually affecting. Like it feels like, again, like don't feel bad for them. They're the enemy, but like they're not. Like we have to. unify everyone.
Yeah, because white women are still definitely oppressed. Like us under patriarchy, white male patriarchy, white supremacy, white women are 100%.
But just so differently.
But
like
so
differently.
and protected differently. And our protection is weaponized against communities of color. And that's why it's fucked up, because these white men will protect you, but only when the enemy is a person of color.
Yeah. Because even like if something horrible happens to a white woman, it's the first thing in the news. It's the first thing the cops are going to go after. So it's like, yes, we're oppressed, but like, again, our whiteness is bigger and like people like care more like in this white supremacist society. So it's like, yes, we experience sexism, like horrible things happen, but it's like, I don't know, like more people will fight to make sure you're okay. So it's
and
just,
especially if like Donald Trump is speaking, he's not ignoring women completely. He's speaking to feminist issues that women care about. He would never use the term feminist, but he's speaking to the safety of women, like protecting them from sexual abuse, protecting them from blah, blah, blah. Like, is it manipulated and false and actually lies? Like, yeah, but like he's claiming to care about being a protector of women. He's claiming that. And these white women don't know anything besides that. Like they think that is protection. And like, especially if, like I said, you're a suburban white mom that's already had your kids, like you're not, I don't know why you're not paying attention to abortion rights for your kids, but maybe you're Christian, maybe you don't believe in that. Like people pick and choose on the topics of like gender. And it is sad because it's like, I feel like in the best opportunity for a lot of white women, as liberal white women talking to conservative white women, is to try to come on the lines of gender and be like, okay, but look at what because like people are always going to be like, well, how does it affect me, right? Like me trying to get you to care about a trans woman as a Republican conservative white woman is gonna be way fucking more difficult than me trying to be like, this will affect your body, you. And then maybe make a bridge into the other stuff, you know? Like,
I know. And that's what I keep going for. It's like, why are you not important enough? And again, it like feels wrong because it's like, there's so many things that are like, you know, but yes, it's like have to like go at it with like relating to them, unfortunately. At first, and then like we'll get to
and then open up the doors and see, because it's all so connected. Like
we're
all
and
in
how
this
the
system.
listener said like counting on white women to be allies, it like almost makes me want to cry, like white women tears. Like it's literally, it's like you can't count on them, clearly. And so that's why it's like these blue bracelets, and I know we're gonna get into it, but it's like, bitch, it doesn't matter. Like you're not like, no, like we are the bad guys. Like I don't know.
Well, no, but exactly though, because it's like we want it, like all these white women and us included are like, how the fuck could this happen? How could white women vote for Trump? But exactly like this listener is explaining, like it's the whole pick me mentality. It's the whole cool girl mentality. It's thinking that they're gonna save you. It's all of that stuff. Like we can't just be like, you're stupid, you don't get it, like you're voting against it. Like we have to educate them. They're confused and they're still kind of locked in their prison of privilege, but also their prison of oppression by men that they don't see.
It's on us as white women to do it because we're not going to get anywhere without them. Like we need them. Yeah. Like we do need them.
The largest voting bloc.
If they had showed up for Kamala Harris and for people that aren't white rich men, like she would have won, you know? So it's just like,
okay, so the last thing that I want us to talk about in this section is how can we ensure our feminism isn't TERF? I think we talked enough about how it's not white feminism, and we're gonna come back to that in a little bit with the blue bracelets. But yeah, Autumn and I off camera in the break, we're realizing also that for the nature of this episode, we probably should have said this episode is directed at cis white women. Because it's not directed at trans white women. I mean, on the topic of like whiteness, you know?
Right.
But on the topic of like all the transphobia and everything that's going on right now, and especially because transphobia is like weaponized so much to get white women on the other side to that side, and even within the liberal white women, I would argue that there's a lot of TERF going on too.
Yeah.
I think
fucked up on that part. Yeah. And we should have said we're talking to cis white women and use that more because trans people are included in our feminism. And sometimes it's like you might think it's better to just not even clarify because it's like, why is there a distinction? Like, we don't want to other them by saying white women and cis white women. But in this particular episode, when we're having this particular conversation, it actually, we do believe is important. And again, we could be wrong. Like, we're still learning and all of that, but we fucked up on that end. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing I've seen about TERFs is on TikTok and, like, them, like, flooding comment sections. I've seen Drew Afualo make a lot of videos on them, like, TERFs and their whole fucking mindset.
Yeah.
Obviously that she doesn't fuck with them. She really doesn't fuck with them, and, like, neither do we. But I do think, like, as white people, and, like, a lot of these TERF feminists are white women, it's, like, we need to talk about that too.
Yeah, and I mean, white feminism and TERF, I feel like, are very connected, you know? Like, they kind of go together. It's the exclusionary stuff. It's the only putting your issues at the top. And even the 4B movement, how we talked about, like, that's got TERF grounds as well. And this, like, specifically in this election and the white women that I've talked to, transphobia is a massive reason that they're voting the way that they are, because they feel like their rights as cis white women are being attacked, and it's the whole thing is blown out of proportion. And
it's like one of the common rhetorics from TERFs is that trans women's bodies, like, maybe are different, where they don't get their period, so they don't experience that one, like, stereotype that, like, unites women, like, oh, all we are our period,
or
like,
the
you know
abortion
what I mean?
thing,
or
like,
the abortion thing. It's like that's what they talk about, but, like, they're just, like, not understanding that, like, trans women, like, are seen as women. They should be seen as women, and just because they don't get their fucking period doesn't mean they don't feel like a woman on the inside. And, you know, unfortunately, them being trans, like, has a whole other layer of sexism, and, like, that they also have to deal with all of the other sexism that cis women get too. So it's like they have more. And I hate the whole argument. It's like, the biggest thing about women is not that we can make babies and get our periods. Like, it's really just not. That's not what being a woman is to me.
Yeah.
So,
and the gender, like, essentialism and all of that stuff that's going on. I mean, yeah, like, in the 4B movement, it's like our way to rebel as women is to not have babies, and not, like, it's all very, like, gender essentialists, like, maybe based more on the things of your sex versus, like, your gender. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's something that, like, honestly, in terms of, like, the ways that I'm inherently transphobic as a cis woman are things that I need to interrogate more deeply. I think, like, my journey in unlearning whiteness is something that I've been on probably since senior year of high school is when I really got hip and really started looking into it. But it's a lifelong journey. And I think in terms of transphobia and the way that I'm inherently transphobic as a feminist, as a woman, all of those things, I don't think I got on that journey until later in college. And I think I'm still on it. And, like, I can clock the obvious signs of, like, misinformation and transphobia with bathrooms and, like, oh, the sex changes at school and, like, all that bullshit that the right is pushing. But what makes me a little bit nervous in interrogating transphobia in my own feminism is when it's among liberal cis women, and the ways that, like, we just exclude trans women because we just don't even think of them. You know, so I think that I know me personally, like, I need to learn more about it. I need to pay attention more. I need to figure out I need to look to trans women to figure out better ways to have those conversations, not to ask them and, like, be like, you know, put the burden on them, but more to be like, you know, look at TikToks and stuff like that to be like, because the ways that I've been doing it is just like, a bunch of it is fucking misinformation, and then just trying to like explain that it's valid. And then that's, like, honestly the extent to which a lot of my knowledge goes, you know? So I think that for me personally, and the way that things are looking in the future for trans people, I know for me there's also, like, in my area, one of the like book events that I had gone to, they have a trans and allies group that meets like once a month, and I was kind of thinking about going to something like that too, because I have like trans and non-binary friends, but I think I need to be in a space where I'm like hearing people talk about issues more.
Right.
You know,
where that space is dedicated to that sort of thing.
Yeah, and not like, and just listen. I think like just listen is what I need to start with, and then. But yeah, just because I know that is a big issue among a lot of Republican white women, Republican white men, I think it's something that I know I want to learn more about.
Right. It's really scary, and it's like, at first it's like, well, it's like, why do people care? It's like, that's the first thought, but it's like, because transphobia like runs really deep, and I applaud that you said that, like, the way that I want to interrogate my own, like, transphobia as a white cis woman is like, you know, you're able to look at that and think about it. And for me, it's like, I, from a very young age, was introduced to trans people, non-binary people. I went to a lot of drag queen shows. Like, I grew up with two moms, and like, I came out when I was relatively young, and like, I always LGBT, like, trans people are within that. And I felt like I'm like on your side, we're all good, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like their experience is so different. And I feel similarly to you that I've definitely looked at my own whiteness a lot more than I've looked at my own, like, the maybe discriminatory thoughts I have about gender and things about that I've needed to unlearn, like, maybe a little bit less, just because I've been like, well, I'm queer, like, yeah, we're good, you know, like, we're all on the same, and we should all be, and there's room, you know, used to be a long time ago, like, debates, like, well, trans people shouldn't be in with the lesbians and the queers and the bis, and it's like, obviously, I believe that they should be, and I also believe that the experience is a lot different for them. And it's not just like, I shouldn't feel so comfortable, like, in my own queerness and like with my family upbringing that like it's all good. Like, I need to like look at that within myself as well.
Yeah, and this is something that like we've talked about in planning episodes in the podcast and stuff too, especially because we cover a lot of like heterosexual issues and like gender war stuff,
like men versus women.
Yeah, and sometimes we'll create polls where we're like, men, what do you think? Women, what do you think? And we always feel weird when we do that, because we're like, should we say femme? Should we say mass? Like, why does it have to break down on gender? But then it's also like there's these certain issues that we feel like need to be covered based off of, you know, so I do definitely want to commit myself, especially in the next year, to like learning more about this. I did buy a book from a trans woman, like her life story that I talked about. And I think too, I know we have trans and non-binary listeners as well. So if you guys are listening to this episode, don't feel pressure like you have to, but if you feel inclined and you want to educate us on ways that you think we could do better to include these types of topics in our episodes, that's definitely something we want to do.
Right. And obviously you can't speak for everyone, but just for you personally, because at the end of the day, everyone's different, and everyone, you know, might want different things when it comes to words like masc or femme and things like that. And that's how it should be. Of course it is. But if you want to just like speak for you, like, we'd love to hear.
Yeah. And when we say men and women for the polls too, just so that we mean like, you know, trans women, too. Trans men
but it's
as
like,
well.
What about the gender fluid non-binary?
Yeah,
and that's
non-binary
why we
people
have made polls non-binary people, comma.
Yeah.
But then we're like, you know, and I think we've done the masc and femmes too. Like, I think we've tried out a bunch of different ones.
ways, yeah.
But I do think, like, you know, we, like you said, we want to talk about gender, and we want to talk about like relationships between all the genders and like what that looks like. So I do think it's okay to separate it sometimes, but yeah, it's like the exact wording.
Because there's like different issues that each gender or gender presentation and all of that faces.
Right.
So
there's also your gender identity, what the world sees you as. Like, it's so confusing, and there's a lot going on, and like how you can make a little poll about that. Like, it's like we're figuring out how to do that, right? And even just like in this episode, it's like not remembering to even say cis, because just like how people are like 4B, men are out, and they really mean white men, but they're just saying men. It's like we say women, and it's like we're meaning cis and trans, or we're just meaning cis.
We're just meaning cis women.
Yeah,
because the TERF. Yeah, exactly.
It's the same shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely comment if you guys feel so inclined. We would love to hear from you. Moving on.
Or DM us.
Or DM us that as well if you don't want it to be public. Or email us, you know? You can always make a fake email. We won't know your identity. Nothing.
We won't look it up.
Next, we have the blue friendship bracelets.
Woo! And the first video I saw of this, it was like this white woman was walking through the street. She had a blue bracelet on, and the sound was, "It wasn't me." Like that song, "It Wasn't Me." So yeah, that was my
That is awful.
Yeah, did I not send that to you?
No,
That
I don't
shit
think
was
so. That is like the definition of like pick me energy.
I know. And it was like a woman in her 40s. And it's not like that's surprising, but it's like that's what we're talking about. Like the women's like reproductive rights are like off the table. Like
they need some educating on what is going on. Yeah, because a lot of this is like white feminism ignorance again playing out in like real time. But let's watch these TikToks.
Swifties, I'm buying as many blue beads and blue hearts as I can, and I'm gonna make bracelets so we know who we can trust. And if you need one, please comment or DM me and I'm gonna send you one, because this is real. It's just, I'm trying hard to keep it together today. So we're going to make friendship bracelets and we're gonna keep each other safe. Send this passes along. We gotta let them know this is what we're doing.
We don't need the votes. I have so many votes. We don't need votes. I tell my people, I don't need any votes. We got all the votes we need. I don't need votes. We don't need votes. We got more votes than anybody's ever had. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes.
Blue friendship bracelets. Who needs one? So I went out and I made blue friendship bracelets for all of us, and I'm going to sell them on my TikTok shop. And 20% of all of the proceeds from the sales that I make from selling these blue friendship bracelets, I'm going to donate to organizations that Trump would hate. The first organization I'll be donating to will be the National Abortion Federation. And after I sell out of these, which fingers crossed I do, whoever buys the most from this round of sales, because I'm going to have to do it in rounds because I'm a mom and I'm a midwife and I work, so it's going to take me a minute to make all of these. But whoever buys the most from this round, I'm going to let you pick the next charity that we donate to. I'm thinking immigration or LGBTQ, but I'll DM you and we can talk about it. Okay. And if you can't buy a bracelet, or if you already have one, if you could just watch this whole video and just like engage from the bottom up, just so that way this gets pushed out there, I'd super appreciate it. Okay, let's see them. So the first one, she's just a simple little blue girl. Simple, classy, elegant. We love her. This lady, she's got blue rainbow hearts. Love her. She's an ally. Ooh, rainbow beads. Cutesy. Very demure. This one tugs at my heartstrings. It says, I am a safe space. I love that. That way we can all identify each other. And then my personal favorite of the bunch, so that way you can show anybody who voted for Trump what they can do. You can eat my ass. So there we go. There they are. That's the 5 of them. So yeah. So if you want to support a working mom who's an ally, and if you want to support charities that Trump would hate, buy a bracelet from me. There's a link here, and then there's a TikTok shop link in my bio. Happy democracy.
Hey, you guys, so this is what happens, and I'm not separating myself because, again, I'm no better than these white women. We all collectively represent something.
Yeah.
But this is what happens. These kinds of absolute spiral, fast-talking craziness that just came out of these people's mouths is what happens when it's your first time, like, realizing that, like,
you might be impressed.
Yes. Like, it's, like, actually crazy. And, like, the last one, honestly, like, I can't even, like, laugh. Like, that shit was so fucked up. The way that you're promoting, like, single mom, okay, girl, but
you're
like
still
the way
white, and 20% of the proceeds, 20% off of a $5 bracelet.
For what? For white pride? We're the good ones? Like, that's literally what it's giving.
And
it's insane.
And the first one, her caption was, "What's our gang sign?" And she said, "How do we signal to each other?" She's talking about other white women. Like, and then
as if we're the ones that are actually like scared of each other.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you want to be oppressed so bad, but just like, okay, like we lost rights as women. I'm not trying to minimize that, like abortion. Like we are under the category of losing rights as well as women. But guys, like, and the second one that was like crying and like Swifties, like we need to show away and like solidarity.
The Swiftie thing was way too much.
Yeah, the Swiftie thing. So that's what I have next. So this article called "Women Upset Over Presidential Election Results Signal Support with Blue Beaded Bracelets" says the blue friendship bracelets are seemingly a nod to the popular Taylor Swift Eras Tour accessory. Swift endorsed Harris after her presidential debate against Trump in September. So a lot of this is coming from, you know, the brand of white feminism that Taylor Swift very, very much exists in and pushes. And I know some of you guys listening are probably Swifties. I used to love Taylor Swift's music in middle school. Like, I still like some of her songs. Like, I'm not like a hyper fan like a lot of people I know. And I'm not gonna lie, I look at her fans a little crooked sometimes because I look at it as white feminism and the things that Taylor Swift said to Nicki Minaj. Like, you know.
Yeah,
but
and
I
kind of just look at her like in terms of music. Like, I really only like ate up the Reputation album. But, like, I definitely, like, fangirl hard, and she's never been someone that it's just, like, I don't know. I don't think she's a bad person, but it's exactly, I don't know if it's her fault, whose fault it is, her fans, but, like, the community that she cultivates, like, it's, yeah, I don't know.
And she has, like, done a lot of great things. Like, I know she paid her bus tour people, like, really well. Like, she's done a lot of stuff that it's like, I get, like, she's a good person, and she endorsed Kamala Harris. Like, it's not like she was endorsing Donald Trump. Like, and I don't want to separate myself because I feel like there was definitely a time, and probably still to this day, that I have to actively try not to do, to separate myself from these women and be like, oh, like, I'm not that type of white feminist. I'm not like Taylor Swift, da-da-da. But it's like, we are all the same. We are all gathered here together. We've had different experiences.
Just like the TikTok said, this is a group project.
This is a group
Everyone
project.
gets the same credit, treatment.
Yup.
Like, it literally doesn't fucking matter. And, like, I've seen so many black women make TikToks about, like, the blue bracelet, like, doesn't mean shit. Like, it doesn't mean anything. And I saw a trans person make that TikTok too. And I'm just like, not like they're the whole voices for the whole community, but it's like, yeah. And just like what you said, it's like doing it for white women to know amongst each other. Like, what the fuck? And like, I'm no better. Like, I had Black Lives Matter as my profile picture for like 3 years. And like, Fiji came to me and was like, what's going on? And like, I fully am like, yes, like, I'm pretty sure I posted a Blackout Tuesday picture too, but it's like, that's what this is all giving. And like, I don't want to demonize these women. It's like, I want to believe that they have well intentions. They want to just show that like they care and like that's good and well, but it's like, you just have to like think before you speak and like sit back and think about what you're really doing. Like, is a blue bracelet really going to enact change and make people feel safe other than like the other white women at Trader Joe's? Like, it doesn't, like, it's not doing anything.
And I will say, I did see one TikTok from a black woman who's in the deep South, and she said, I know everyone's hating on it, da-da-da, but for me, where I live, like, it does make me feel safe, and don't like minimize my experience, whatever. So it's like, you know, I don't live in those areas, and like, maybe that is a thing. But like, I also feel like if we have to, and we have TikToks that I might be echoing just what they said, so I don't want to take credit for certain stuff, but it's like, if we have to like signal, maybe we need to realize that we're part of the problem. And it's like, when we're calling we're calling in white women who voted for Trump, we're also calling in 4B liberal white women, blue friendship bracelet liberal white women. And we know that there's a fire there, but let's direct it, you know, let's learn, let's educate a little bit more and like put it in the right place.
Right, exactly. We know that there's a fire there.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point. It's like, and it's not like, oh, well, whatever Black women says, that's what you should do, because everyone has a different opinion about things. For this one person, maybe it will make them feel safe. Like, that's such a good point. And that's what I was trying to say. It's like, they're not the voice for the whole community. But even without all of that, and just thinking to yourself, like, why are we as white women, like, doing something for us that's not really about us, but it kind of
why
is,
are you
like,
doing it? And the last TikTok, I think you're right, is the scariest one, because it's like, you're monetizing
that was just,
this.
like,
You're
borderline
monetizing
evil.
off of this. Like, you are sending 20%. And then, like, the way she's even talking about it, look how cute, like, eat my ass. Like, it's like, this is a serious issue. Like, I'm sure you think it's serious enough to, like, be, but this isn't, like, a cutesy, like, DIY project moment.
And, like, we don't know. Like, we don't know any of these people making TikToks and, like, what they really think. At the end of the day, it's like, she could be, like, a fucking Trumpy for all we know and just wanting to make money. Like, we don't know. And that just goes to show you, it's like, we as white women represent really one thing in this white supremacist society. Like, you'll never really know. A blue bracelet isn't gonna do shit. I'm sorry.
You know what the first thing I thought of with the blue bracelets? Like, you guys have probably seen it in past episodes, but I have a beaded red bracelet that says red flag on it. And I was like, well, I can't fucking wear this anymore. It's just like a red hat. Like, I used to have a red hat that said, like, I don't care or something. It was like just a baseball hat. I'm like, definitely can't fucking wear that.
I've seen that the MAGA hats are not only red anymore, though. They're, like, disguising them as, like, navy blue and green. And it's like, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, that's funny, honestly.
So we have another woman. Another woman said, 52% of women that look like me that voted for him. I'm ashamed and hate that others might assume I'm part of them. And she also said that she is taking down her Harris Waltz flags and bumper stickers for safety reasons. She said she was still wearing the blue bracelet and Converse sneakers. I don't know anything about the Converse sneakers as her sign of support. So I'm just like, okay, like, again, like, we're taking down the stickers because you're so worried about your safety. And I don't want to, like, completely minimize that, because I acknowledge I haven't been to every fucking corner of America. But if you felt safe enough pre-election to have that sticker on your stuff, now they're in power. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, that's just like, you're so concerned with your own safety that, like, it's virtue signaling. Like, I know you said, what is virtue signaling? But it's like, when you're like, I am such a moral, virtuous, good person that I need to show you just in case you don't know, because the rest of my demographic is bad.
Bro. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of white people do that. They're like, well, just in case, like, you thought this, like, it's not that way or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie that I haven't felt like that in certain spaces. Like, I mean, I live in Atlanta, and a lot of the places I go to, I mean, one, I feel like it should be obvious because I'm, like, one of the only white people in those groups, but, like, I feel like I'll be, like, trying to throw something in there or say something, like, to be like, oh, I'm not, like, one of them, or almost overcompensate when it comes to a conversation. Because, like, when I'm around my black friends and stuff, like, they'll be like even traffic stuff, like, oh, this stupid white bitch, like, what, you know, stuff that but they feel comfortable to say around me because they feel comfortable with me. But then it's like, but then I feel the need to, like, be like I'm hurt by it in a slight way, because I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, even though they're saying it because they're comfortable around me, but then it's like, let me overcompensate. So I think it's something that we
you're not going to be like, I'm the stupid white bitch.
Right.
Like,
and sometimes it makes me feel worse when they'll be like, oh, Fiji, we didn't mean you. And then I'm like, like, that makes me feel
like, no,
like,
I know.
You know what I'm saying? But, like, there's definitely, I mean, we all virtue signal, and the most when we're around, you know, groups that we have more power and privilege around, because we feel white guilt.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not, like, excluding myself from these blue bracelet women. Like, I don't think, like, I didn't take it upon myself to start a DIY project and go on TikTok, but I have definitely done virtue signaling, performative stuff in the past. Like, 100%.
Me too.
So take this as, like, the extreme of the performance, but there's other stuff. So this other article from Glamour says many white women are also encouraging their peers to not make their own bracelets, but to buy them from Black-owned jewelry companies. On TikTok, a small business owner named Alicia shared some options from her company, beaded and balanced jewelry, saying she'd sold more than 200 since the trend began. She even made a unity bracelet with blue beads specifically for it. Another Black woman who owns a business called Melanin and Moon Minerals said that she was making bracelets using the blue-hued mineral stone solidite. Solidite is the stone for anxiety and communication, she said. So, like, we can't acknowledge that, too. Like, if you're gonna get a blue bracelet, if you feel so inclined, like, at least get it from a Black-owned business, a trans-owned business, a business that is donating the proceeds, something like that. If you're gonna do it, I don't know what else to say there.
Right.
And then from another article called Please, We Don't Need Your Blue Bracelets, they compare this whole blue bracelet movement to Donald Trump's first election and the pink pussy hats. It says the blue friendship bracelet is hardly the first form of empty allyship to arise in response to a Trump election. In 2017, thousands attended the Women's March, a protest the day after Trump's first inauguration, wearing homemade pink caps. The so-called pink pussy hats were intended to be a sign of resistance, inspired by Donald Trump's bragging about sexually assaulting women on Hollywood Access. However, they demonstrated a very narrow expression of who faces oppression by only representing genitals that are pink, white women, inherently excluding women of color, trans women, and those who are non-binary. It centered on whiteness as the only demographic that faced women's rights violations, and wearing one didn't necessarily come with tangible action to support all women. It happened again in June 2020, kind of like how you were talking about, when in response to the brutal murder of George Floyd by a white police officer, many white social media users took to Instagram to post an image of an empty black square, co-opting a movement started by two Black women to raise awareness of the music industry profiting off Black artists. The posts, which use hashtags like hashtag Black Lives Matter and hashtag BLM, also drowned out crucial information shared by organizers, including where to protest and donate. It ultimately became another example of performative allyship that lacked any meaningful connection to truly support the cause. And it's like, bro, I'm not gonna lie to you. I know we were all making fun of the pink pussy hats and like da-da-da, but like I didn't get it completely until I read this article.
Bro, I was just about to be, I was just like reading that because like you were talking and I was like, oh. Like I didn't, like bro, we might have, but I like the pink pussy hat.
Yes.
That's what I was like yeah. I knew that it was exclusionary.
Yeah.
But that specifically, like that's that white shit. Like
yeah, because we don't think. I mean, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't even think. I was just like, oh, because like women pink pussy hat. I don't but exactly, it's exclusionary. I mean, we know that whole. I was at the Women's March in Boston Common. There, it was a sea of white women. I mean, there were hella other women too, but like, I don't know. I feel like so often white women's voices are the loudest when things like this happen and act like they are the most like hit, tortured, oppressed, and then like center themselves in this shit when it's like, I don't know, maybe like, yes, you also faced a loss of rights and oppression, but like you being the loudest voice of pain right here is not doing anything.
Yeah. And it's like, it's really like, that's what happens. Like what I was saying, it's like with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, like a lot of people like quote unquote woke up to like how racism still lives on today.
Yeah.
Tried to like did a bunch of performative shit and then just like went on life as usual. And then again, like this monster gets elected and again, we feel called to like step up, but it's like we can't just like live life as usual. Like no, like it literally like it needs to be like something on our minds like all the fucking time in order to like really achieve like some sort of like world where we can be like understanding and like learn from each other and like all of that sort of shit and like unlearning our own whiteness and like taking accountability for things and like crucifying white guilt because it's just horrible.
Yeah.
But so it's like, even like someone like us that like thinks that like we are including everyone, like we didn't even get the pink pussy hat thing until now. Like that's fucking embarrassing.
Yeah.
But like I'm like
exactly. But the thing is that like our embarrassment, our tears, our shame, all of that is like, it's not useful. And like, we're gonna feel it. We're fucking humans. It's embarrassing to be like, you know, everyone else understands this thing that I don't. And it's not even everyone else. It's people understand this thing that I don't because I'm privileged and I have blind spots, like complete blinders on. But like, one, if you experience that, I think the key is to not get defensive about it, to like take space, think about what was said, thank the person for like correcting you, honestly, and then don't also put it on them to relieve you of this like guilt that you feel. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if for example, one of these liberal white women with the blue bracelets, like someone tells them, you know, maybe this isn't the way, and they like get defensive about it, and maybe it's a black woman that tells them, if they're like, oh, like I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, da, da, da. Like now you're making this woman uncomfortable because she like, now you're also making her responsible for your forgiveness,
right?
You know, and like it's uncomfortable. Like it's uncomfortable anytime you like fuck up or you feel like you hurt someone unintentionally or whatever, if you're ignorant to it, but like that's on you to go work on, you know?
Yeah. On to our next poll that we asked our audience. We asked, how do you feel about white women wanting to make blue bracelets to show they are Democrats? 64% said it's stupid and performative. 21% said it's a good act in solidarity. 15% said I didn't know about it and don't care. I do think we all should care because I do think that we can like learn from these things. I do think it's stupid and performative too. I think like sometimes it comes from well-intentioned, sometimes it doesn't, but that's kind of like irrelevant whether it was well-intentioned or not, because exactly like the article said, it's not like doing anything that can really enact any change, like especially when it only lives on TikTok and things like that. It's not really helping anything. It's not like the answer. Like it could be a step that you take and then you're like, wait, that was kind of fucked up. You change that behavior and move forward and like do something else. Like attend like an event to like hear from BIPOC communities, or like talk to white women that are on the other side or even are on your side and just talk about whiteness shit together as white people alone, and no one else can hear that shit because no one wants to hear that shit. But I do think we should care, and I don't think that we should ignore it, because just like the article laid it out, it's like this is not the first time like this kind of shit has happened, and I think we know that. Like this is just a new wave of the classic white feminist shit that's been happening literally forever.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, yay, me too, me too, change the fucking world. But it's like, for who?
Right, exactly. And we excluded the woman that started this, who was a black woman. So it's like, yeah.
It's
and
the same old tale over and over and over again.
Right. And just because like we aren't the liberal white women who did this whole, or liberal cis white women that did this whole blue bracelet trend, like we said, like we're not better, and we have our own little blue bracelets, virtue signaling,
other stories,
like
that
performative
we could share.
stuff that we do. And I think it's important to like analyze your life and like catch yourself in those situations where you are blue braceleting, and just kind of be like,
because if you're a white woman that's like, I've never done anything performative, like that's a lie. Like we literally all do it, and it's like the goal is honestly not even to stop doing it, but it's like understand why, and then you'll like stop doing it like less and
you'll do
less.
the right things,
right?
Hopefully instead.
It's like really decentering yourself from it completely, honestly.
Yeah. And like, and
which is not easy as a white person. Yeah. When you're like, everything is about
me. Yep.
Yeah. And someone submitted a story saying, are these white women not understanding that they're not being judged by the color of their skin? And that's what a lot of this is about.
And exactly, like, I feel like this is like, oh, like 53% of us voted this way, so we have to signal that we're not part of that crowd. But it's like, maybe if you just showed up with your actions in a way that doesn't make people feel unsafe, instead of just prioritizing like being nice and being polite and being whatever and being secretive because you are afraid of your own safety that is kind of imagined, then I think we wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. Like, why did you jump to TikTok to make that "it wasn't me" video?
Yeah.
That video was crazy, Fiji, and it had like 1.2 million likes and probably a shit ton of views. Like, it's not like funny. And like, I know that we laugh sometimes because it's uncomfortable, but like, these TikTok videos just hit different. You don't know this fucking person. You don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
It just pops up and we're all just keying. Like, I don't know.
It's bad. It's an epidemic.
It's really bad.
It's not funny, but it's bad. So we have this next TikTok that I loved from a Black woman talking about why she does not fuck with the blue friendship bracelets.
There's some lessons that are being taught. You see, that's a wonderful thing about the universe in karma. It doesn't prefer one person over another. If there's a lesson to be taught, it is going to be taught. You know, you'll get the opportunity to avoid things somewhat if you listen to the lesson the first time, but every time that you don't, it gets worse and worse. Here we go with the friendship bracelets. Those blue ones. What? I personally haven't seen a friendship bracelet since the 80s because I'm an adult. There are a lot of white women who are purchasing them. And honestly, the person who came up with that idea, business owner to business owner, that was a great idea and it's going to make you a lot of money. Congratulations. But as this is getting out and Black women are saying, we don't give a damn about your bracelet, white women are pissed. But here's the lesson. You are feeling uncomfortable because people are looking at you in a certain type of way, based on maybe not you, but the actions of people who look like you. Welcome to our world. It's hadn't even been a week yet of how that feels, and you are uncomfortable. That has been every day of my life for all of my life. My family integrated a whole side of town, not just a neighborhood. So I know, as well as every other Black person, what that feels like. I remember watching the news in the morning to see what crimes happened and praying that it wasn't a Black person because I knew I was going to be treated poorly based off of what someone else did. There was a lesson. Some of your buddies, maybe you, didn't listen, and now you're all getting the lesson. And other lessons will be taught as these next 4 years go on. And, you know, yes, Black people will be caught up in the bullshit but we were built for this. We understand how to thrive and survive. And that is what we will be doing, just like we have done for the past 400 years.
So yeah, I don't even think there's really much for us to say in response to that video from Ocean's Light. Like, I think everything she said is just facts, and, you know, I don't have any response.
Something to highly consider.
Something to highly consider. The discomfort that we feel that people have been feeling for their entire lives and generations and centuries. So next, still from the same article about white feminism. In her book, Innocent Subjects, independent feminist scholar and editor Theresa Johnson writes that, quote, white feminists generally committed to progressive politics and ending gender oppression have a particularly deep investment in being good white people. And their feminism is rooted in the connection between whiteness and innocence. And this white feminist innocence is prioritized in order to maintain and legitimate the continued centering of white women within feminist movements. And before we talk about this, I want us to watch this video from The Onion, which, if you guys don't know, The Onion is satirical. It's not like real news stories. They kind of do like skits and like fake news, I guess so to say, like making fun of things. And this is a video about liberal white women.
As an ally to the Black community, I believe in doing the right thing. Always. As allies, it isn't enough to just be passively accepting. We have to stand up against racism in all its ugly forms. Which is why I, as an anti-racist ally, refuse to say absolutely any word that starts with the letter N. I'll admit it, growing up, I used to say words that start with N all the time. N-I-C-E, N-E-C-K, N-O, but I was ignorant. I was racist. And I'm sorry. Today, I know better. I'm educated. I know what it means to be a true anti-racist ally to the Black community, and that means refusing to ever say any word that starts with N. I believe anyone who claims to be an ally to Black people but then continues to use words that start with N isn't a true ally at all. I mean, you might be asking, did a Black person tell me to do this? Because the Black community shouldn't have to tell us to stop saying words like NAKED. That's on us. Maybe, like me, you were raised to think it was okay to say words that start with N. Well, it's time to unlearn that. For instance, instead of saying, I'm hungry for NACHOS, try saying, I'm hungry for cheesy chips. It can be exhausting educating people, but it is such a small step that can make a huge difference. For example, once I was at a restaurant with a friend and she tried to order NACHOS. I interrupted her and I tried to tell her that they're called cheesy chips, but she got defensive and argumentative. She said that since Spanish is her first language, she should be allowed to say NACHO. And so I said, well, maybe you should speak English. I think if a Black person had been there, they would have shaken my hand and said thank you for calling them cheesy chips. It isn't easy being an ally. You might even lose friends. But at the end of the day, I'm proud to say I always stand up for what I believe in.
But I think this video is funny, and I also see myself in it because this is someone who's using words like unlearn and like, she's engaging in the liberal, intersectional, feminist. So, I mean, obviously they're using like dramatizations by like not using any word that starts with the letter N or whatever. But like at the end when she's like, oh yeah, don't say nachos, say cheesy chips to a woman who speaks Spanish as a first, like it's giving Karen. But it's like, I think it's just this like mentality that a lot of us liberal white women have of being like above other liberal white women in certain senses because we like know so much and we are so educated, we are so supportive of these communities that like we're blind to how we fuck up too.
Right. And it's alluding to how we as white women like never do the right thing ever. Like we always do some either like I don't know, either the pink pussy hat shit or like something so extreme like this. And like the TikTok before of the woman getting on like crying, like, what are we gonna do? We have to do the bracelet. And like, it's like, yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. But I understand too, because like they were using words like unlearn and like kind of like trying to engage with that. So
and like
I could in the way that she was like, it's just one small step. Like it's like it's like I've definitely said that shit, So I agree. Like I do see that within myself too. But it's like, yeah, that video is like, as much as it is funny, it's also so deep, and it does like really allude to like how it's like white women just thinking they know what to do. It's like you don't. Like we can't just immediately know what to do. It's like you do kind of have to like, I don't know.
And
it's
be
just
open to like, fucking up, which we're probably going to, but then not like doubling down on it and being like, oh, well, like her being like, you have to say cheesy chips, and her being like, the Black community would have been proud of me for that. Like, just like really believing that you are a good liberal white woman and they would be proud of you for that. Like, and having this false sense of security in your activism that's like,
and feeling good
against other people.
And like feeling good about yourself, like being able to sleep at night because I'm a good white person. Like that's the thing too. It's like sometimes it's not even about what the Black community would do. It's literally just about you wanting to feel like you're not the devil. And like, even though like you are though, like within the system, like you are.
Yeah, and that whole video is just more of a like speech about her being like, I'm one of the good ones. Like, I unlearned my stuff. Like, I have reached the end of my white bitch fucked upness. And in reality, I don't think you can reach the end of it. I don't think like, I think we are all, like we talked about, like born with whiteness, like born with white privilege, white supremacist mindsets. We're born inherently racist as white people. We are ignorant to a lot of the struggles that BIPOC people, trans communities, all of these different groups of people go through because we're in that fucking 14th floor window looking out and we don't see. But like, and it is uncomfortable to have to learn about this stuff because we don't want to be fucking bothered.
Yeah.
But like, we should
and the
be bothered.
innocence that article talked about too, of like, well, it was my ancestors. Like, I didn't do it. Like, I didn't create racism. And it's like, yeah, but you are like living in it and contributing to it just by like what you look like, and also like not doing enough to combat it. Like, you are contributing to it and like being complicit within it. And like, I've definitely been like that too, and still am sometimes. Like, I know I need to do more as well, but that's why we're trying to say, it's like, we're not trying to demonize these women doing these things. It's like, we do relate to it in a sense for sure. But I do think that we have reached a point where we at least know not to go buy a blue bracelet. Like, we don't know everything, but at least we know that. And it's all about like this like white supremacist mindset that we all have. It's like learning about what your first thought is and having to counteract that and like change that thought, you know? It's like, that's what you can get better at. It's never going to be like perfect, but it's like you need the tools and the understanding to like not always believe the first fucked up thought you have and like change it to
and embrace being ignorant. Like, acknowledge that you don't know everything and don't be defensive. And like, for me, I feel like it's helped so much when I think about just the ways in which like even liberal men, you know, men that call themselves feminists, like do the same shit with us. Like, they think they're super feminist, they're super supportive
and
stuff.
It's too much.
And then they say something and it's too much, and you're like, all right, bro, like, you're overcompensating right now. You're performing, you're trying too hard to make me comfortable. Like, it's almost giving like you're low-key even more sexist. Like, that's what that's what we're giving to other communities when we do this. So it's like,
I know,
at least as women we can like understand how it feels on the men's side of things, and then just like flip it in the other role, consider yourself from a different perspective, and like, you know, be open to learning. But it's cringe. We're gonna be fucking cringe on this journey of...
It's not escapable. It's gonna happen.
It's definitely inescapable. But we asked you guys, do you think liberal white women's advocacy is mostly performative? And 70% of you guys said yes. 30% said no, very similar to the other poll about centering ourselves. And yeah, I think it's facts.
I think it's facts too. I don't know who. Yeah, I think it's that. Yes,
it's the same as the other poll where it's like mostly white faces that were like.
I was gonna ask that. Okay,
but like, I think it's also just the misguidedness too. Like, I think it's. I mean, I went to so many protests when I was at Emerson in Boston. Like. The extent of my activism was not like doing a ton. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought I was really out in these streets activizing. No, like, bitch, like, no. It's in
the
those
college
little
we went to,
interactions.
too, you have to understand that, like, it was very, like, activism, performative activism, like, a lot of that going on at Emerson.
Yeah.
And again, I do think more people were well-intentioned for sure, but still, it's like, it doesn't matter what your intentions are. But I can definitely relate to that, too, or it's like, I did this, like, one program in high school, and I was like, okay, cool, like, I know what whiteness is now, I know what my privilege is. Like, I did this one thing, but it's like, that's not enough. It's like, you have to do more. And I honestly think like some of the biggest change like does come within your community, like your own family, like other white people, or like sticking up for people in your community who are different than you. It's like those acts of protest, like although they seem small and they're not like at a big protest with 1 million people, it's like that stuff, like we can't change everything. Like, we can really only work on like with what's in front of us. So, you know, it might not seem like you were doing a lot, but it's like little conversations that you've had, it's like maybe you did change someone's mind slightly. And like one thing about you is like you love to talk, like especially like I feel like Fiji, like when she gets lit at night, like she will bring up politics, like without a doubt.
But like,
and
that's the thing, and this is
I
why
know
I'm like,
that's not
bro,
like what
I'm
to
not
go
removed
for, but
from
like
the cringeness though, because like,
Yeah,
I'll
bro.
bring up
Me
politics
either.
about shit, but I'm in a room full of black people, and it's like, okay,
Like, yeah,
bitch,
we
you're
know.
talking to the wrong room. Like, let me
Right.
not get drunk and like have this podcast and go down a fucking rabbit hole to anyone in the vicinity about gender and the manosphere and like whatever. And I've had many moments where I've been drunk as fuck at the afters, whatever, talking to a group of people about, and then I like the next morning I'm like, bitch, like
fuck,
that was
yeah.
not the people you should have been talking to or having that conversation. And they were into it at the time, so I thought. And like a lot of my friends have been like, you know, good job, Fiji. Like it feels good, but it also makes me cringe because I'm like, okay, I think I'm doing too much.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, but especially after this election, I'm like, bro, like I need to make ties with communities that look more like me. And I have completely separated myself. And that is like honestly inexcusable in my mind because I want to talk about these issues. Like I have a passion for it.
Right.
But it's not in the right place right now.
Yeah. It's just like, the conversations will look differently in the spaces you're currently in. Like you can still talk about this stuff, but like it's not, I totally understand what you mean.
It's different. Yeah. So next in our
Good job, Fiji.
Right. I'm like, exactly. And then when they say that, I almost get a sense of being like, oh shit.
You're like, fuck. Like, why did like don't say good job? Like, no.
I'm like, no, because it's like, you know, when you're doing that, it's probably like subconsciously that's what you want. But also,
right,
I just
like,
want to
am
talk
I
about
doing
the
it for
issue.
the good
like,
job?
Am I like confirm that I'm on the right track? You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
at
But
the
then when they
same
say that,
time.
I'm like, oh fuck, like they know, like you know. So it's
right,
not,
like I know.
it's
They
not.
know.
It's not helpful.
And then we look fucking ridiculous, like talking about this shit we just realized when it's like, yeah, duh. Like, I know, like that. But again, it's like, I don't want to demonize that either because I do think people need to go through that to like reach.
Yes.
And I do think people should do it with other white people behind closed doors. So BIPOC communities don't have to suffer through it.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, we need to fuck up to get better. And I feel like at this point, like we just want people to fucking care about one another. Like, I really think like that's what the world is like calling on right now. It's like, why can't, so it's like, just, something is better than nothing. I don't know.
Exactly. So the last section that we want to bring you guys to is kind of what can we do instead? And we also want to talk about pain aversion, the pain aversion that we as white women feel and how to overcome that and get started with actually making a change. So first we have this amazing letter that I found online. It's called An Open Letter to White Liberal Feminists, and it is by LaRonda S. Manigault Bryan. She is an associate professor of African Studies at Williams College. She is the author of Talking to the Dead, Religion, Music, and Lived Memory Among Gwala Geechee Women, and co-author of Womanist and Black Feminist Responses to Tyler Perry Productions. And this letter was written right after, it's not funny, that Donald Trump was elected the first time. And it is just, reading it, I'm just like, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. So we're going to read it again. And hopefully LaRonda S. Manigault Bryan's words stick with us this time.
Okay. So she says, this is long, guys, so strap in. Dear white liberal feminists, after Donald J. Trump's election, many of you have approached me and my black brothers and sisters especially with tearful eyes and somber faces. In person, in private, in public, and in the digital sphere. You have bemoaned the state of this world and our political landscape. You have lamented the deep-seated divisiveness of this country. You have wept, you have hugged, and you have gingerly asked, how are you? And yet your actions and inquiries are especially loaded, as much for their selfishness and their disingenuous nature. Your hugs and tears are of the self-soothing kind. Your inquiries seldom derive from a true desire to learn about how I, as an African American woman really feel. Rather, your queries posit in the most passive aggressive way. Aren't you as upset about the election results as I am? Aren't you embarrassed to be who you are? Aren't you sorrowful that your parents and your in laws and your siblings and your friends in towns and cities and states voted for Donald Trump? Aren't you ashamed to know that the women of your race also voted against so very many of theirs and others' interests? Aren't you devastated that the first female candidate, our candidate, to earn the presidential nomination for a major party did not win and allow us to make history for women? I am none of those things, and I share none of these sentiments, in large part because these queries are not my narrative. I am ultimately not surprised by the most recent outcome of the election. I found your overall shock at the role white women voters played in the election curious for its naivety and annoying for its obtuseness. If there is a sentiment we share, it is disappointment. I am disappointed that it has taken you this long to actually get what Black women, and namely Black feminists and womanists, have been trying to help you see and feel for a very long time. We now, for example, share fear. But my fear has been tempered by the legacy of slavery and anti Black racism in this country. You now worry for your children, your family, and your brothers and sisters. I have been worrying for mine. And if I'm being honest, and we can be honest, right? I'm also a bit delighted. I am delighted that you have received the potential awakening of a lifetime. And now that you might actually get what so many of us have been describing all along. Welcome to that deep, perpetual angst. Embrace it and allow it to motivate you to a deeper form of action. I am also thrilled about how this moment might signal an end to the dangerous, disingenuous version of feminism that so many, though not all, of you embrace, and which promotes white women's success over and against anyone else. But what will you do with this newfound dismay? How will you interrogate and sustain your recent enlightened perspective about how white women remain complicit in the oppressions of so many non-white folks and even themselves? Given your responses this week and the last, I am already seeing a kind of writing on the wall, that of denial. So few of you have commented on the implications of large numbers of white women voting against Hillary Clinton. So few self-proclaimed white liberal feminists interrogate racism, imperialism, capitalism, and sexism because they benefit from it and are too busy being protected by it. What then is the efficacy of this particular brand of white feminism in our current movement? If this most recent presidential election has revealed nothing else, it has shown that this specific ilk of white feminism must die. In this moment, if I have any regret, it is that you are trying to force me to be complicit in your self-denial and that you expect me to do yet another kind of labor. You look, of all places, to me to help you deal with your feelings. Rather than holding up your weeping, weak selves, I have a few questions for you to consider. Who will you be in this hour? What will you do to enact change? And with whom will you partner to do it? By all means, use whatever mechanism you require to move through the stages of grief as you bury your false idol of Fox feminist solidarity. You must now do the intensive work to heal your troubled soul. And after you have come to terms with your own guilt, embarrassment, and pain, I encourage you to run with your newfound perspective. There is a terrifyingly beautiful lineage of Black resilience, seasoned by Black suffering, that you might turn to for hope. In the meantime, please stop assuming, listen attentively, and look deeply within yourselves to purge racism and sexism and a whole litany of other isms. Most significantly, get yourselves together, and in so doing, remember that Black bodies have historically been your solace in a myriad of ways. Embrace this opportunity to dismantle oppressions, ashes to ashes, dust to white liberal feminism.
Like, she ate. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really have much to say because I feel like she laid it all down and said everything that there is to say.
Yeah, I'm so glad you found this. I feel like this was like really impactful, honestly.
Yeah.
And I do the part where she said, if I'm being honest, I'm also a little bit delighted because like, even though this is so horrible, like maybe this will build on something and change could happen. And just like you said at the beginning, it's like he was just elected again. You know,
Yeah.
this was written back in the Hillary versus Trump
2016,
2016, which was 8 years ago.
Bro.
And this still rings true right now. Like nothing, it's the same thing happened
The
again.
exact same thing. Yeah, and the other part that I really liked that she said is to, where is it? I can't find the exact quote in it right now, but when she's like, you know, look to past people, like Black people in America who have been through this and how they've overcome it. Like when you're like, you know, cowering on the ground and you're so ashamed and you're feeling broken and you're feeling like whatever.
For
I
hope,
think,
that's what she said. Look to them for hope.
Look to them for hope, and like look to them as like examples of how they got through this.
Right.
You know, because like the blue friendship bracelet, the one woman crying, like there's a reason they say white tears and stuff and white fragility, because it's like for a lot of people to look at us, it's like that's it. Like that's all it takes for you to absolutely fall apart. Like pick yourself the fuck back up. This is what our people, not my people, but you know, this woman, what she's saying, have been doing for centuries. And so if you need a source of like hope and fire and a reason to keep going, look to these communities of people who have been fighting for years and years and years and years.
And it reminds me so much of that chaotic TikTok of that white woman that like broke down about the blue God damn it, I can't. The blue bracelets and started crying. It's like that TikTok, like, and the one, like, obviously about making money, it's like, that is literally, like, white fragility in a TikTok video.
Yeah.
And it's like, the fact that this woman is even taking the time to, like, say that, because exactly, it's like, get your shit together. But it does make me think of the pedagogy of oppressed. It's like, that's what happens when you've been living so comfortably for so long, and then all of a sudden you feel like the rug is tucked out from underneath you. But there are other people in this country, like Black people, that have felt that and 10 times worse forever. They didn't know what it was like to be comfortable on top of that rug, you know? And that's what she's like desperately trying to like get across to them. And I don't know why it doesn't click. I mean, I do, because like whiteness is a bitch, and like people have those blind spots, and some people just simply don't even want to think about that, so they just dismiss it.
And and it's okay to be upset about the election and to be hurt and to feel emotions and to be worried about your own rights. It is okay to feel all of those emotions. It's just, don't go to these even more severely underprivileged communities to like look for solace from them. Yeah. You know, and don't make your activism purely performative and purely woe is me. Like, be respectful of everybody else that is also experiencing this as well. Like, you know, deal with your emotions, and you have every right to feel a lot of them, but deal with them.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
move through it. And it's essential to deal with them, so then you can get to that point of like wanting to make change and like having that fire within you to do so.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you do need to like fall apart, and like, you know, it's not like white fragility is almost, it's not like a bad thing. It's like an inevitable thing. It's like as white people, we all like have that and felt that and do that. Mm-hmm. But it's just what you do after the fact. You can't live in that white fragility space and just ignore it and continue life as normal, because you can continue life as normal as you want to.
And other people don't have that choice, and they're counting on you. A lot of communities are counting on you and us, you know, because we have a better position to talk to some of these communities that are dangerous for other communities to talk to.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of next. So we have this TikTok this is another one that I think blew my mind and inspired a lot of these episodes, at least for me. This is from a white woman, but I think it's also, you know, hearing it from Black women and hearing it from transgender women, like BIPOC women, like men, it's so helpful and it hits so deep, but sometimes I'm so like struck with like, what do I do? And like the white guilt and stuff like that. And that's why I feel like seeing something like this from a white woman and some of the other white people in this episode almost makes me like, it's fucked up, but it shows me that there's a place for me, and like, and it shows me a roadmap of what to do next.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So,
because it's almost like, and I was just going to say, like, from even like the TikToks from like Black creators, Black women specifically that we've watched and we're like, oh, that changed everything to me. It's like, in a sense, like, is that like relying on them to change our mind? Like, why didn't we like look that up or something? Or
Well,
like,
because it is like, to a degree, like, you know, pedagogy of the oppressed. It's a job, unfortunately, under oppression for the oppressed to liberate the oppressor, because the oppressor knows nothing else besides their experience. The oppressed can only like, which is why we're saying to call men in. You know, and I'm so grateful for all of the Black creators that are calling us in and are saying like, okay, white women, like, yeah, but
now's your
pay attention to this. And then, you know, white women like this, who I think, you know, is ahead of us and being like, using her platform to speak on these issues and has thus like inspired us to do so too.
Okay.
So all right, let's watch it.
Not that it's a time to make it about myself, but I'm a white woman, so I better try. This outcome, I think, is the direct result of white people's aversion to pain. What do I mean by that? People of color have always experienced suffering. I think they have had no choice but to endure it and understand it. White people, in particular, have been conditioned by the system to believe that any pain endured is intolerable and an injustice against their human rights. This is the result of technologies that were pretty much only accessible to them for a long time, right? All the way back to segregation, ease of access to creature comforts was given preferentially to white people, right? The front of the bus is one example, but there are innumerable. Now, a lot of these things, all the way down to temperature control, to internet access, etc., 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 being able to order your food, being able to recuse yourself from working in person, all of these things are given preferentially to white people. And what that means is that white people as a collective have an enormous aversion to pain, and that becomes an intolerance to pain. The system's goal is to make sure that you are so pain averse that you will not do anything that will force you to endure it. And that means protesting in real life. That means engaging in social interactions that make you a little uncomfortable. That means boycotting companies that you really, really like the products from. You just think they're yummy. You need their Eggo waffles, you know? I'm not gonna bring up autism, but I could. Whenever we have a culture that believes itself to be entitled to not having to endure pain, we have a weak society. This is the culture of white people, especially white liberals, because they get to run around with this delusion that if they just believe hard enough and repost enough Instagram infographics, they will be safe from discomfort of any kind. And all the while that they are saying this and believing it, they don't have to engage in conversations that make them uncomfortable. They don't have to talk to people whose ideologies are different than theirs, and they certainly don't have to fact check themselves on the way. This is what the system wants from you. This has been designed deliberately. And people of color have been saying this for so long, but I'm a little white girl, and so I get to tell you, probably on your For You page, #blessed. In this moment, we have to understand that we've been set up. You've been told that your relationships should not be hard, and if they are hard, cut them off. You've been told you don't owe your family anything. Cut them off. You've been told if you're uncomfortable interacting with strangers, then you can just exist in a digital world and never have to be uncomfortable ever again. You've been told that you don't have to practice social decorum. You can just flame people online and there will be no repercussions to it. You don't know that this is causing you to lose social skills that are essential to community organizing. Do you understand?
This is huge. And it's so funny because when I think about like this podcast and all the topics that we cover, there are multiple times where we get onto topics of race where Autumn and I are like afraid of saying the wrong thing or afraid of saying the right thing. And like so often I feel like we choose to not talk about the whiteness side of things and we choose to like distance. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't look. And we had it's so crazy because we had a conversation about this when you were here in Atlanta, when we were drinking and we were having a whole conversation about like the podcast and future episodes and blah, blah, blah.
When we were lit that night?
When we were on my balcony.
Okay.
And we were talking about like white people and white women. And we were like, we need to cover this more because like this is something that like we feel so uncomfortable talking about, but we need to talk about it. And it's like, exactly like when she's saying like, we're so pain averse and we're so used to comfort that our solution is always to just cut people off, to end relationships, to not sit in that discomfort because we're so privileged. Like, that's what I've been doing with my white family members and the white people I grew up with. Like, I'm so fucking, that's what all of us do. And it's just like that. I think now, watching everything that I've consumed, listening to everything, I'm like, that is honestly, to me, the most counterproductive to the movement that it can be. I don't know.
I know. And I honestly, like, pain averse, like, that whole thing, like, it took me a second, like, what does averse mean? But, like, now I really get it. It's, like, the whole thing with, like, why... It's just like breaking down more like why are we so uncomfortable talking about these things, like aside from the obvious. Like it's because we've like been conditioned to like do nothing uncomfortable.
Right.
While like people of color, like black and brown people, it's like they're always doing uncomfortable things because they're living in a white supremacist world and country, like in the United States. So yeah, and I know, it's like, ultimately, it's like, that's the biggest fuck up. Like, you can post all these infographics, you can talk to your other white liberal friends, like, we're two bitches that say exactly after every sentence, like, when it comes to social justice and, like, politics, like, there's really nothing that we are, like, disagreeing on.
Right.
But it's like, while that's important for us to have space, it's like, it's not really doing anything.
Right. We're in an
both
echo
just,
chamber.
like, echoing each other, like, yep, we're good, blah, blah, blah. And, like, yeah, it's just really bad. And, like I said, like, I grew up in an interracial queer family, but I also have a dad that's very much around that has a wife and like a bunch of like white kids, and like their wedding was like Blue Lives Matter, and like I literally left the wedding early because I couldn't handle it, quote unquote. And it's just like, bro, like it's not funny. Like I had a real opportunity to like do some shit.
The number of arguments where I've gotten very angry at a Christmas party and like stormed out and cried or like whatever, instead of sitting the fuck down and sucking it up and having a fucking conversation, like, is insane, because I just feel so ostracized around other white people, because you do, like, as a liberal person, like, you know, depending on what communities you're in, you feel ostracized, but you're really like, we're not compared to other people, and think about the discomfort that other communities of people that are oppressed have to feel all the time. And like, I don't know, like I keep thinking about it in terms of like all the just like micro ways that I let shit slide. You know what I'm saying? And like at work, in social interactions with certain stuff where it's like you don't correct something, you just like let it happen. Or and there's a difference between being like, whoa, don't say that. I mean, depending on what it is, sometimes it calls for that. But like the whole wanting to be polite and the whole like niceness and the whole avoiding, oh, we don't talk about politics, we all just get along. Like that is such a privileged place to be in. And I think that it's just not productive. And I'm like, you know?
Yeah, I have like a really quick story, but anyways, like I have daddy issues like really bad, and like so do two of my sisters. Like me and my sisters have different moms, but the same dad. Anyways, my dad is like just, I don't even know. He was working at a prison for a while with a lot of black men that were in, like, it was like not prison. It was like a different type of like facility. Right. And like he came home one day, I was like visiting from LA, like I never see him. We were all at the dinner table, and he's like telling us that like the black men in this prison gave him the pass to say the N-word, and were like begging him to say it essentially. And like the words were like about to come out of my mouth. I was like, Dad, what the fuck? And my sister, who's 20 years old, was like, shut the hell up. And like, I was like, that was a moment for me. I was like, why was she quicker to do that than me? You. Like I'm the big sister. And like, that was like, and I'm not going to act like it's easy to like talk to my dad like about these things, but I've let him slide with so much misogynistic and like hateful shit, honestly, like throughout my whole life, because like I feel silenced by him in general. Yeah. But it's like, I feel, again, like white
and
guilt,
emotionally exhausted too.
I feel guilty about that. And so I don't want to sit here and act like it's fucking easy. Like it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's not like easy to do it, but it is so important, because at the end of the day, I don't feel threatened that my dad's going to take my life or hurt me or lay his hands on me. Like you know what I mean? All it's going to be is an uncomfortable conversation. Like, and that's on like decentering men too. Like, why am I so worried about his feelings? Like when he says fucked up shit, but it's like I feel that, like, I know I need to do more, and like I can be with my moms and like with my brother and like feel safe. We're all like gay fucking family. But I go over to my dad's side of the woods and I'm literally like fucking scared to speak. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, I should not. So.
And that's the thing, because it's like you gotta think, and same, like I've been in conversations like with my family and my parents where like they've said something that is like not right, but I just don't have the emotional capacity to say anything right now, so I just ignore it and keep the conversation going out of politeness. And it's just like by me doing that, then it's enabling it, and then it leaves it on someone else to potentially have to correct or have to experience. And that's not okay, because I'm letting like my privilege and my comfort be fine instead of like correcting someone else, or at least having a conversation. But yeah, so then the last poll that we asked you guys, and then we just have one more TikTok before we wrap up, is what do you wish white women did the most in their advocacy? And this poll is really telling. 63% said advocate issues to their white friends and family. 19% said decenter men. 16% said connect with BIPOC communities. And 2% said go to protest. And I will say, like, for a long, long time, I thought my activism was connecting with BIPOC communities. Like, I thought it was like that, like they see me as an ally, and that is just like such a like white savior complex, like such a like they need me, such a like, oh, I can't be bothered with discomfort and everything else that like, you know, no.
Or
like,
I'm not on the white side, like I'm not on that bad
I'm
side.
I'm not one of them. And it's like, in reality, these communities are probably in a lot of ways making themselves uncomfortable by accepting me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not to that degree, because like these like are my very good friends, but also like you got to think about that. If this is someone else that's joining your friend group that is white and does have that privilege, it's the same if you invite a man to a group of a bunch of like women friends, like, you know what that means and stuff like that. And I thought that that's my activism. I mean, even like quick story, but like when I was in college, I taught 8th grade with another girl through this like political program where we taught about civic action. And it was a group of 8th graders in Roxbury, Dorchester, Boston, which is all black kids in an inner city community. And like, I felt very white savior-like. Like, I felt like, oh, like I'm helping these kids. Like, they see that a white person is on their side. Like, da-da-da-da. Right. And it's like, no. And like, I've had like, you know, is that good to be an ally and to have people feel like they have a cool white friend? Yeah, sure, that's great. But that's not where the actual like work is. Right. You know? And I'm just like looking at like my shit particularly, and I'm like, yeah, like, it's just sad that I feel like I've been in certain communities for so long, and I'm like finally coming to the conclusion, they don't want to hear about my racist grandfather. Like, maybe I should go do something about that.
Yeah. And when, like, I used to think, like, my activism should be, like, only listening to, like, people of color and, like, their experiences and, like, not having, like, a group for whiteness. Like, I used to think, like, that was so counterproductive. Who gives a fuck what white people have to say?
It's segregation or something. Yeah.
Like, literally, I was telling you that story. Like, literally. I was like, why are we dividing ourselves more? But it's so fucking important to, like, have the white conversations. It really fucking
to relieve that burden, because it's not theirs to carry. They've carried enough. We need to deal with our shit, and we need to look inward. Right. You know, within our liberal white communities, and then within the fringes of the Republican Trump communities that we can touch, which is our next TikTok that I want us to watch before we bring it home.
So many people, regardless of political affiliation, actually share our values, right? And we see this all the time in the tenant union. We've organized straight up Trump voters. I remember this amazing, we had this great campaign a couple years ago. Yes.
I love this story, please. Yes.
We had this great campaign in a trailer park, it's in Kansas City, but right outside of the city proper. And this trailer park, we had heard, everyone was going to be displaced so that the county could build a new jail called Hart Village Trailer Homes, right? And we were like, okay, we probably have to go organize there. And we sent out a scout in advance, and the scout like went and kind of surveyed. We do this to try to figure out how many people it's going to take to knock all the doors, whatever. The scout went out and counted all the doors, but also came back and was like, there's a lot of Trump signs out there. And so we had this debate within the union. Some people were like, I'm not trying to organize racists into the union. Like, there's no way, I'm not knocking on those doors. And other people were like, hang on, we have a community agreement that says we don't make assumptions about anyone, about anything. And those might be our people, and they are going to be displaced so that the county can build a jail, which we all agree is wrong. We have to go knock those doors. So the latter category won out in the end. We said, you know, if you're not comfortable knocking doors, don't go out. But some of the rest of us are going out. And we knocked those doors. And first of all, we definitely found Trump voters. We also found black families, Mexican families. We found working class white families who are not Trump voters. You know, we found a whole mix of people, all of whom were like, we're about to be screwed and we're trying to do something about it. So within a week, we had 111 of the 120 families signed on with the union. And we ended up winning multiple millions of dollars to support their relocation. We canceled their rent for 6 months. I mean, it was this amazing campaign where by the end of it, some of these Trump voters were joining their neighbors in chanting, homes, not jails. That's like, I mean, think about that. That's an abolitionist chant.
That's fucking crazy.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we did not knock on doors like teaching lessons about racial capitalism or something like that. But through the union, people get a political education. Through meeting their neighbors and actually forging real relationships with them, they get a political education. Does that mean that they've totally transformed and they're not going to still go vote for Trump? No, but that's not the goal of the union.
So I just love this TikTok because I think it's a great example of, like, you know, looking past what somebody voted for and how you may disagree and pigeonholing them into these ideologies and uniting people over a community-based thing in your local area to make change and slowly get into, you know, our beliefs. And like even her saying them at the end, saying homes not jails is an abolitionist phrase. And like these people, you know, had you presented it to them in a certain type of way, they would have been like very turned off. No. You never know. But it's also like giving them the credit that like maybe, you know, they will be on your side. And I think as liberal white women, like we talk about how dangerous it is to cut off and block people, the other white people that we know. Like this is what happens when we look past that and we find these like inroads in community and are able to unite over common goals and like grow it bigger from there. So I just like that as something to inspire us.
And I do think that's the biggest thing I've learned from this election is like it's not the answer to like hate the other side, at least as white women. It's not the answer for us to like do that and exclude other people and like actually want to understand and like believe the best in people, like is something where change can grow from there more so.
Yeah, we have to be tactical. But all right, guys, that brings us to the end of this very long episode per usual. We're going to wrap up the episode as we always do, talking about what we're wet, dry, and still a little bit confused about this topic. You want to go first?
Yeah, I will go first. I mean, definitely what I just said is like something wet, like learning that and like realizing that because that is like a step in my activism journey that hasn't been true before, is to like really try to engage with people from the other side and try to like want to understand where they're coming from and realizing that it's like we are a mirror of them, even though we voted differently, we believe different things, like we are all the same. And like having that call to action that it's like vital for white women to like organize and like actually do something like this. We've had this chance many times in history and like we're still like we just keep having it, and so it's like we need to grab hold of it and actually do something and know that we're gonna fuck up along the way, but sometimes like fucking up is like what you need to like really understand like why you've been fucking that up and like what you can do differently now. So, I mean, that's honestly the biggest thing I'm wet about. I also really like how you included that letter from LaRonda. I think like that was so important. And although it is sad that it still rings true 8 years later, I think like credits to her for even like writing that. Like I'm sure that was like really, really hard. But as a white woman, like that did touch me and I did like resonate with it a lot. So yeah, I liked that letter.
Yeah, same. I was going to say the same thing, like that letter particularly, and also very wet about all the creators that sparked this in us, because it's not like I don't think I would have come to this conclusion had I not been consuming content on TikTok from a lot of the creators that are mentioned in this episode, and then ones that we weren't able to include as well. And a lot of it comes from not white liberal white women. There were some definitely, but a lot of it comes from Black creators. So I'm very grateful for that, for them calling us in and, you know, inspiring what these episodes, this one and the one before it. And also I think the ways we're going to continue to interrogate our whiteness, our liberalness, our feminism, all of that. I mean, we've been interrogating our feminism, but like, you know, taking it a step further, and the whole future of this podcast. So I'm definitely wet about that. I'm also wet about getting uncomfortable, because I think it's something that we've both been wanting to do in terms of race for a long time. And I think it's unfortunate that it comes post-election. I wish that we had done it before, but this is where we are, and I'm proud of us for the small win of starting it now. And I'm also wet about the potential to like call other liberal cis white women in for a conversation, and to potentially learn from other communities who do listen to this episode and comment too. Not that it's your burden or that you guys have to comment or anything like that. Like, it's really on us. But I'm definitely, I think I'm past the point of feeling destroyed about stuff and feeling a lot more motivated.
Right.
So I'm definitely wet about the ways that I can see how I can be an advocate and an activist in my old life and have control over that more.
And just because Trump won doesn't mean it's over. In fact, we need to bring ourselves together more so now than ever, because he did win. And even if Kamala Harris won, we would still need to do that, because this country needs a lot of fucking work. Yeah. And for dry, I mean, it's a lot of dry. Like, it's like, not that like talking about it is dry, talking about it is really good, but like the state of our country is like devastating, and like it has been so like for so long. And it's like devastating to hear that white women are the largest bloc, and like they're essentially like the ones responsible for not only this Trump election, but like the one in 2016 as well. And I guess like on like empathy, like again, like it is like, I feel like I learned through this episode that a big reason like white women voted for Trump is because they do feel protected by him, like from their white cis women, because of like their whiteness and like all of that. And it's like, as much as it's fucked up, like it does break my heart for them that they like think they're actually being protective, and like it's all false, and they're like essentially like falling for his games, because we all know he's not a feminist like most of us do. So that's like really hard to talk about too. And I don't know, like I know like white guilt is not the answer, but I do feel very ashamed of myself for like making like bad comments about white women that voted for him, because like I know it's okay to let out your emotions, but at the end of the day, like through this episode and like just all of this post-election content that we've been watching, it's like I really think it's like the biggest disservice, like you said, that we've been doing, like excluding ourselves from those communities that literally look just like us, but have different views. But yeah, this episode, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, it's all, like, sort of dry, but then I, like, as soon as I'm about to say something's dry, I'm like, oh, but at least we're talking about it, so it's kind of wet. Like, I'm just, Yeah,
because, I mean, same.
That's all I got.
I'm dry about the, like, discomfort and the pain aversion and the guilt and all of that stuff, because they're uncomfortable emotions, but I think, like, I'm better accepting them because we are talking about it, so it's not completely dry. I'm definitely dry about the TERF stuff. I'm definitely dry about the white feminist stuff. The 4B movement is a little bit, like, scary.
Oh my God, I know.
I am dry about, white women always putting their whiteness before their womanness, but also like grouping men as a whole category as white men when that's not all men. And I just think that there's a lot of exclusion going on in general, and that's not helping. And that doesn't mean, I think we think a lot of times that like exclusion is protecting rights and protecting communities, but I feel like it's really just reinforcing white supremacy, patriarchy, all of that
and
stuff.
pushing us all apart. Like,
yeah. And a part of me is like dry, and I mean, also going to be getting into confused, and because that's a lot, like all of these different communities, these different identities, untangling them all, making sure we're like unlearning everything, talking about it all. Like it can feel fucking overwhelming, but at the same time, I think it's our responsibility. So
yeah, totally. And I guess I'm dry too about like, from what I learned about people shaving their heads and like how that was like really hurtful. And just that, America, the United States, white people appropriate everything and like make it some trend on TikTok when it's something like a lot more serious and things like that. But for Confused, it's like, I have really been thinking about like reaching out to some of my childhood friends that like are white women. Like some of them live in Florida now and some of them still live in Massachusetts where I'm from, and like what to say and like how to navigate that, but really wanting to hear them out. And like I like feel like called that I should really do that because these are people that like I know. And as much as like we've been out of touch like since I went to college, like I feel like we had a good enough friendship where it's like maybe they would hear me out. So I feel like I really, really need to do that.
Yeah.
But like I am like, just feeling a lot of ways about it that I need to just like look past and do it. But it can be confusing on like what to do, what's the right thing to do. But I think ultimately it's just like keep talking to the people that like make you feel safe, and like just as much talk to people that like make you feel uncomfortable like about all this stuff too. Like don't just like stay in your safe zone of like your liberal friends and like all of that. Like we do need to branch out, and I guess I'm still like trying to unlearn like why that even is so hard. Like I feel like the pain adverse stuff and like the pedagogy of oppress like kind of helps me understand that, but it's like I don't know. It's just confusing, and like organizing more too, like because I think about my hometown a lot because that's when like I had the most friends, but like out here in LA I think there's opportunity for me to like do things too, even though I don't know as many people. Like I think like I should like do something like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think same, like confused about ways in which to get involved. I mean, I've already started conversations with some Republican white women, like I said, but that's like simply not enough. And I think I need to do more in Georgia because it's such a key state. And I have been connecting with neighbors. I think I'm going to start going to HOA meetings because I live in a condo building. That's like a good start.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be like a political thing. Just start getting to know your neighbors. So I think I'm really going to start there. I've been thinking about the trans ally stuff, but like, yeah, definitely confused about the ways to keep this going because I don't want it to be something that's just like spark emotions and then let it drop. I want
because
it to be
it's happened
consistent.
before, and it continuously happens when some like major event that's broadcasted all over the world, like a presidency or police violence, is what steps people up, but then it like fizzles down, and it's like we cannot do that again. Like collectively, we can't do that.
We can't
again.
go back to the political apathy and everything like that, like before. Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. And I think the last thing that I'm mostly just confused about is, like I said, like I think I still have work to do as far as unlearning certain transphobia, even though I'm not actively, I would say, transphobic. I think I need to learn more inclusive ways to add that to my feminism, and then, you know, just continuing to unlearn white privilege and all of this stuff. Like, it's a confusing journey. It's a lifelong journey. I think I'm confused about the ways that I participate in performative activism and also centering myself in certain issues. Like, I know I've definitely done it. It's so easy to sit up here and point to the blue bracelet movement, and I don't want this episode to just be like, we're pointing at them, bad, bad, bad. We need to do better, because it's us as well in the little blue bracelet moments. And I think I'm confused about figuring out, you know, I know I need to do a lot of work in those small social interactions, those like elevator interactions, those cashier interactions where I have an opportunity to say something but just choose not to because I don't want to be uncomfortable and this person doesn't know me. But I think I need to stop looking at it that way. I think because we live in a digital world, we've deprioritized these in-person interactions, but they hold so much power. And I know that's a challenge for me, so I'm a little confused about how I'm going to do it. But like the letter from LaRonda said, I think, you know, looking at people at the past and how they did it inspires, you know, a lot of the strength that we're going to need.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that about does it for this episode, guys.
Make sure you are following us or subscribing, like on YouTube. So you can be notified and in the know of future episodes. We release weekly, okay? Make sure you like this video, drop a comment, email us, DM us. We want to keep the conversation going. If you have any other topics that stem from this, particularly about unlearning whiteness, other specific things, like please let us know.
Yeah.
And make sure you're following us on Instagram and TikTok at So Wet So Dry, the O's are zeros. We have started to post more TikToks recently, and we're hoping to keep that going. And you can submit in the polls and all that. So just find us everywhere at So Wet So Dry, the O's are zeros.
We also have listener support. It's 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99 a month. It is through Spotify in the bottom of the description of every single episode, no matter where you guys are listening. We would greatly appreciate that so much. And yes, please comment, keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought, and we love you so much. We will catch you in the next episode. Bye! I watched this video essay that absolutely blew my mind. It's called The Unknown Pleasures of Problematic Romance, okay? And essentially, she talks about the romance genre as a whole. And as a genre, it is a fantasy. Now, when we watch any other type of fantasy like Harry Potter, Narnia, Marvel stuff, there is a certain suspension of disbelief, right? These people have powers, there's wizards. We know it's not real, but we're engaging in this fictional setting. And so if romance is a fantasy, instead of typical superhero defeats evil villain with violence, you have woman brings problematic man to a point of surrender with her empathy and femininity. But why don't we see this as a fantasy? Why do we consume it as something that we think is possible? We don't think that we can suddenly fly or shoot spider webs out of our fingers like Spider-Man. We don't think that we can just go destroy a whole town to protect from evil. But in romance novels, there is a general belief amongst us women that we can save problematic men from their problematicness with love and support, just holding it down. Now, she argues that romance as a genre serves as an escapist fantasy for women to live out the fantasy that they will never experience in real life. Stay with me. For a lot of cis heterosexual men, the idea of perfect masculinity is using your strength and your power and your masculinity through force to defeat evil. For women, on the other hand, we are the victims and survivors of a lot of abuse put on us by men. So when we imagine a heroine in a fantasy setting that also still wants love, because that is what is also pushed to us as a culture as something we should really want, our version of a hero's journey or a heroine's journey is using empathy and love and femininity to bring this evil man to his knees. Get him to realize everything that he did wrong so that he will just love us enough. In a lot of toxic, problematic romances, dark romances, she argues that this is just a fantasy, just like any other superhero fantasy, just like any other hero's journey fantasy. But because it's something women predominantly consume and it's something that is soothing the anxieties, past traumas, fantasies of women, we look at it and hold it to some higher moral value. This entirely blew my mind because I'm not gonna lie, I was looking at a lot of these dark romance, problematic movie fantasies, like even like The Notebook to an extent, Twilight, like that is goals. Like that is what I'm supposed to do, like that is what I should achieve, like da-da-da-da. And I swear to God, ever since I watched that YouTube video, I just look at romance as a genre so much differently. I'm looking at it as a form of catharsis. I'm looking at it as a form of escape, as a form of this is art, this is media, this does not exist. It exists to soothe something in me. It doesn't exist to hold something I should aspire to. It sounds so simple, but it's not. And I think a lot of the problem with why we don't know how to consume this media, digest this media, is because we don't really have great art education in school, relationships education in school. But that's a whole other topic. You guys should definitely watch that YouTube video essay. And also, if you're interested in learning more and more of our thoughts on it, my best friend and I have a podcast called So Wet, So Dry. We did a whole episode about abuse in art, dark romance, It Ends With Us, toxic romances in the media. Lana Del Rey makes an appearance, so definitely check that out. The link is in my bio.